The waiter refilled my water glass for the third time, and I watched the ice cube spin and settle. Across from me, Victoria checked her phone again, her manicured nails tapping the screen with that particular rhythm that meant she was texting someone who mattered more than I did. "The scallops here are supposed to be incredible," I said. She didn't look up. We were at Riverside Terrace, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list thicker than most novels. I'd made the reservation 3 weeks ago, back when I still believed anniversary dinners meant something. The hostess had smiled when we walked in, probably thinking we were one of those successful couples who had their lives figured out. She was half right. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a converted textile factory, all exposed beams and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, white tablecloths, candles and glass hurricanes, a pianist in the corner playing something classical that I didn't recognize but that sounded expensive, the kind of place where people proposed or celebrated promotions or pretended their marriages weren't falling apart. "Vicky? What?" She finally raised her eyes, and I saw that look, the one that said I was interrupting something important. "I asked if you wanted to split the seafood platter." "Whatever you want, Owen." She went back to her phone, her thumb scrolling with practiced efficiency. I took a slow breath and let it out through my nose. We'd been married 3 years, together for 5, and somewhere along the way we'd stopped being people who talked and started being people who coexisted. I could pinpoint the shift if I tried, maybe 2 years ago when she'd gotten promoted and started traveling more. Or maybe it had always been like this and I'd just been too stupid to notice. The waiter appeared, young guy with slicked hair and the kind of eager smile that comes from working on commission. He had that look servers get when they can sense tension at a table but have to pretend everything's perfect. "Have we decided?" he asked, his voice pitched to sound both attentive and unobtrusive. "We'll do the seafood platter for 2, I said, and the house white. Victoria set her phone down, finally. Her eyes flicked to the waiter, then to me, then back to the menu she'd barely looked at. "Actually, I'll have the salmon, separately." The waiter's smile never wavered. "Excellent choice. And how would you like that prepared?" "Grilled, no butter." "Perfect. Any sides?" "Asparagus, steamed." He wrote it down with a little flourish, then looked at me. "And for you, sir?" "The ribeye, medium rare. Whatever comes with it is fine." "Wonderful. I'll get that started for you." He disappeared into the kitchen, and Victoria picked up her phone again. I folded my hands on the table, watching her face in the candlelight. She was beautiful. Objectively, factually beautiful. Dark hair pulled back in a way that probably had a name I didn't know, something involving pins and spray and 20 minutes in front of a mirror. Skin that somehow stayed perfect, despite the fact that she never seemed to sleep. Cheekbones that cast shadows. Green eyes that used to look at me like I mattered. She worked in lifestyle marketing, which meant she spent her days making mediocre products look essential and her evenings proving she was better than everyone around her, including me, especially me. "How was your day?" I tried again. "Busy." She scanned the room, her gaze catching on a couple 2 tables over. The man wore a suit that probably cost more than my car payment. The woman with him had the kind of jewelry that comes in small boxes with ribbon. "This place is nice." "Yeah, I thought you'd like it." "It's fine." Fine. The word hung in the air like smoke. Everything with Victoria was fine lately. Dinner was fine. Work was fine. Our marriage was fine. Fine meant nothing. Fine meant she'd stopped caring enough to have an opinion. A different waiter, older, with the careful posture of someone who'd been doing this for decades, brought bread and olive oil. Victoria didn't touch it. I tore off a piece of the focaccia and dipped it in the oil, more to have something to do with my hands than because I was hungry. "I was thinking," I said, chewing slowly, "maybe we could take a weekend trip next month. There's that cabin rental upstate you mentioned last year." "I have the Chicago conference next month." "Right, the month after, then." "Owen, I don't know my schedule that far out." "Okay." She glanced at her phone again. The screen lit up her face for a second, and I saw her expression change. Just a flicker, a softening around her eyes that I hadn't seen directed at me in months. "Who's that?" I asked. "Work." "On a Friday night?" "We're launching a campaign Monday. Everyone's stressed." The older waiter returned with our wine. He poured a small amount into Victoria's glass first, the ritual tasting portion. She swirled it, sniffed it, took a sip, and nodded. He filled her glass, then mine, then set the bottle on the table and disappeared again. I took a drink. It was good wine, or at least it was the kind of wine that people who know about wine would call good, dry with a finish that tasted like oak and something else I couldn't name. I preferred beer, but Victoria had opinions about beer at nice restaurants, and I'd learned to choose my battles. "How's your project going?" she asked, her tone suggesting she was asking out of obligation rather than interest. "Which one?" "The shipping thing. We're optimizing the route system for the Eastern distribution network. It's complicated, but if we can reduce the average delivery time by even 6 hours, it'll save the company about $40,000 a month in fuel and overtime." "Sounds boring." "It is." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "At least you're good at it." "Yeah." We sat in silence while the pianist transitioned into something that might have been Chopin. The couple at the next table laughed about something, their heads close together, their hands intertwined on the tablecloth. I watched them for a moment, then looked back at Victoria. She was texting again. "Vicky, can you put the phone away?" "In a second. We're supposed to be having dinner." "I said in a second, Owen." Her voice had that edge now, the one that meant I was being unreasonable, that I was making a big deal out of nothing, that I was the problem. I sat back in my chair and took another drink of wine. Around us, the restaurant hummed with conversation and the soft clink of silverware on china. The pianist finished his piece and started another. The older waiter checked on a nearby table, refilling water glasses with practiced precision. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, typed something quickly, then set it down screen up on the table. I could see the lock screen, a photo of her at some beach, wind in her hair, sunglasses reflecting blue sky. I wasn't in the picture. "Where was that taken?" I asked. "What?" "Your lock screen." "Which beach?" "Oh, Miami. That conference in March." I hadn't known she'd gone to the beach during that conference. She'd told me it was 3 days of panels and networking, all indoors, all boring. But I didn't say anything. I just filed it away with all the other small discrepancies I'd been noticing lately. The young waiter returned with our entrees, setting Victoria's salmon in front of her with a flourish and my ribeye in front of me. The steak was perfectly cooked, the asparagus on the side still bright green, the mashed potatoes arranged in a little swirl. "Enjoy," he said, and vanished again. Victoria cut into her salmon with surgical precision, her movements efficient and deliberate. I started on my steak. It was good. Tender, seasoned well, cooked exactly how I'd asked. I should have been enjoying it. Instead, I was thinking about Miami and beach photos and all the things Victoria had stopped telling me. "This is actually pretty good," she said after a few bites. "Yeah, mine too. My ex would never take me to places like this." "You're embarrassing me," she said, her voice pitched just loud enough for the tables around us to hear. The words sounded like something shocking, but my expression remained impassive. Years of practice had taught me how to absorb Victoria's casual cruelties without flinching. The businessman at the next table glanced over, then away quickly, his expression carefully blank. The woman with him, blonde, expensive jewelry, probably his wife, whispered something behind her hand. Victoria took another bite of her salmon, completely unbothered. I set down my fork and knife carefully, aligning them on the edge of my plate. Then I picked up my wine glass and took a slow sip, letting the moment stretch. The restaurant seemed to get quieter somehow, or maybe it was just my perception narrowing to this one table, this one moment. I set the glass down and met Victoria's eyes. "Then go back to him." Her expression froze. The fork in her hand stopped halfway to her mouth. Around us, I could feel attention shifting, not obvious, not dramatic, but there. The businessman pretending not to listen, the blonde woman glancing over. The couple behind Victoria suddenly very focused on their own conversation. I stood up, pulled my wallet from my jacket pocket, and placed 3 20s on the table, more than enough to cover what we'd ordered and then some. The young waiter was heading our way with a basket of something, more bread probably, but I caught his attention and pointed to the cash. "For your trouble," I said. Victoria's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her face had gone pale under her makeup, her eyes wide with something that might have been shock or anger or both. I walked past our table, past the couple who'd heard everything, past the businessman and his whispering wife. The older waiter near the kitchen entrance watched me go, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. The hostess by the front door looked up from her reservation book, her professional smile faltering when she saw I was alone. "Have a good evening," she said automatically. "You too." The night air hit me like cold water. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting my heart rate settle, watching cars pass on the street below. The restaurant's windows glowed warm and yellow behind me. Inside, Victoria was probably still sitting there, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to feel guilty. The rest of me felt nothing. I walked to my car in the parking garage 2 blocks away, my footsteps echoing off concrete walls. The Honda was where I'd left it, wedged between a Mercedes and a BMW in the section reserved for restaurant patrons. I unlocked it, climbed in, and sat there for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. Then I started the engine and drove home. The route took me through downtown, past the office buildings where Victoria worked, past the bars and restaurants where we used to go when things were different. I put on an old podcast about logistics optimization, something dry and technical about warehouse management systems, and let someone else's voice fill the silence. Our apartment was in a converted warehouse building on the edge of downtown, the kind of place that looked better in photos than it felt in person. Exposed brick walls, industrial fixtures, floor-to-ceiling windows that let in too much light in the morning and not enough warmth in the winter. Victoria had picked it because it was trendy, because her coworkers would be impressed, because the address sounded good when you said it out loud. I'd wanted a house with a yard. I parked in my assigned spot, number 47, painted in yellow stencil on the concrete, and rode the elevator to the 4th floor. Inside the apartment, I hung my jacket on the hook by the door, kicked off my shoes, and went to the kitchen. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, the cheap stuff I kept for weeknights, not the expensive bottle Victoria had bought for guests we never had, and stood at the window, looking out at the city. 4 floors below, people walked by on the sidewalk, a couple holding hands, a man walking a small dog, a woman in a business suit talking on her phone, normal people doing normal things. I wondered if any of them were going home to apartments where they didn't belong, to partners who'd stopped seeing them. I finished the bourbon and poured another. Then I went to the living room, sat on the couch in the dark, and waited. My phone was on the coffee table. I picked it up and turned it off completely. Not silent, not on vibrate, off. Then I sat there in the darkness and drank my bourbon and thought about absolutely nothing. The nothing lasted about 40 minutes. Then the thoughts started creeping in. Small things at first. The way Victoria had said my ex with that particular tone, like she'd been thinking about him. The way she'd checked her phone throughout dinner, like she was waiting for something more important than our anniversary. The beach photo from a conference that was supposed to be all panels and networking. I got up, went to the bedroom, and changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt. Then I pulled out the filing cabinet we kept in the closet, a small 2-drawer metal thing that Victoria had bought at an office supply store when we'd first moved in together. Victoria handled most of our shared expenses through her account, automatically paying bills and splitting costs and generally making sure things ran smoothly. I'd been fine with that arrangement. It was easier. It meant less work for me, it meant trusting her, but I'd always kept my own records anyway. Bank statements, utility bills, lease agreements, copies of everything, filed chronologically, just in case. I laid them out on the bed and started reading. The numbers told a story if you knew how to look at them. Our joint checking account showed regular deposits from both our paychecks, mine every other Friday, hers twice a month, automatic withdrawals for rent, utilities, internet, streaming services, grocery purchases, gas, normal expenses for 2 people sharing a life. But Victoria also had her own accounts that I didn't have access to, her personal credit card, her savings, her business account for freelance work she sometimes did on the side. I'd never asked to see those statements. It had seemed invasive, like I was questioning her autonomy or her trustworthiness. Now I wondered what they would show. Around midnight, I heard keys in the lock. Victoria came in like a storm, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with sharp, angry strikes. She didn't call out, didn't announce herself, just came straight to the bedroom where I was still sitting on the bed with papers spread around me. She stopped in the doorway, breathing hard, her face flushed with anger or embarrassment or both. Her makeup had smudged slightly under her eyes. Her hair had come loose from whatever pins had been holding it. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. I looked up from the bank statement in my hand. "What was what?" "You left me there, in front of everyone." "You told me to go back to my ex," I said calmly. "I thought you wanted to eat alone." "I was joking." "Were you?" She stared at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, that I wasn't apologizing, that I wasn't scrambling to make this right, that I wasn't playing my usual role of understanding husband who absorbed her cruelties and moved on. "You're being childish," she said finally. "Maybe. I called you 15 times. Phone's off." "Why would you turn your phone off?" "Because I didn't want to talk to you." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, her hands clenched and unclenched at her sides. "This is ridiculous. I said one thing. In front of everyone. So what? You're so sensitive?" "I'm going to sleep," I said. I gathered the papers and put them back in the filing cabinet, taking my time, making sure everything was in order. "We can talk tomorrow if you want. Owen, tomorrow." I walked past her into the bathroom, brushed my teeth while she stood in the doorway watching me in the mirror, then climbed into bed. She stood there for another minute, breathing hard, her face cycling through expressions I couldn't read. Then she turned and went to the living room. I heard her pacing, heard her pick up her phone and put it down, heard her pour herself wine. the expensive stuff from the sound of the bottle, heard her footsteps back and forth across the hardwood, the rhythm irregular, agitated. I closed my eyes and waited. Sleep didn't come easy, but it came. And when I woke up the next morning around 7, Victoria was already gone. No note, no text, just an empty apartment and a wine glass in the sink with red residue dried at the bottom. I made coffee in the French press Victoria had insisted we needed, standing at the kitchen counter in my wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants, watching the grounds steep. Outside the window, the city was waking up. People walking to work, cars honking. The normal soundtrack of a Saturday morning in the city. I poured the coffee into my favorite mug, plain white ceramic, nothing special, and sat by the window, watching people 4 floors below. That's when I noticed it. Not something big, not something obvious. Just a pattern I'd been ignoring. Victoria's schedule had changed about 4 months ago. It had been gradual at first, easy to miss. An extra hour here, a weekend meeting there. She'd chalked it up to a busy season at work, to new clients and big campaigns and the demands of her job. I'd believed her because why wouldn't I? She was my wife. She worked in marketing. Marketing people worked weird hours. It all made sense. Except she'd also started going to the gym. 5 mornings a week, she'd leave in yoga pants and a zip-up jacket, carrying a designer gym bag I'd never seen her use before. She'd come home at 9 or 10 at night, sometimes later, claiming exhaustion from work and workouts. 14-hour days, every weekday, for 4 months. I sat there with my coffee, doing the math in my head. If she left at 7:30 and came home at 9:30, that was 14 hours. Say an hour at the gym. That left 13 hours. A normal workday was 8, maybe 9 if you pushed it. That left 4 unaccounted hours. Every single day, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month. Where had she been? I took another sip of coffee and stared out the window, my mind turning over possibilities. Maybe she was working late, maybe she was networking, maybe she was taking extra classes or working on side projects or doing any of the 100 other things ambitious people do when they're trying to advance their careers, or maybe she was doing something else entirely. I set down my coffee cup and went to get my phone. I spent the next 3 days being perfectly normal. Monday morning, I woke up at 6:30, made coffee, showered, and dressed in the same business casual uniform I'd been wearing for 6 years. Khaki pants, button-down shirt, leather belt, comfortable shoes. I drove to the office building where I'd worked since before I met Victoria, parked in my assigned spot, and rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. The logistics firm of Hastings and Reed occupied half the building, all open-plan workspace and glass-walled conference rooms and motivational posters about efficiency. My desk was in the systems analysis section, a pod of 6 analysts who spent our days staring at spreadsheets and optimization software. "Morning, Owen," said Jennifer, the analyst who sat across from me. She was drinking from an enormous travel mug that said, "World's Okayest Employee." "Morning. How was your weekend?" "Fine. Yours?" "My kid had a soccer tournament. We lost every game." "Sorry to hear that." He's 7. They're still figuring out which way to kick the ball." I smiled and turned to my computer, logging into the system and pulling up the project I'd been working on for the past 2 months. Route optimization for the Eastern Distribution Network. 47 warehouses, 230 delivery zones, thousands of variables affecting delivery times and fuel costs. It was complicated work that required absolute focus. Perfect. I spent the morning building algorithms and running simulations, testing different scenarios to see which configuration would shave the most time off average deliveries. Around 10, my boss Helen stopped by my desk. Helen Cortez was in her mid-40s, perpetually stressed, and honestly one of the better managers I'd had. She actually understood the technical work we did, and didn't just spout corporate nonsense about synergy and paradigm shifts. "How's the Eastern Network looking?" she asked. "Good. I think I found a way to cut average delivery time by about 8 hours if we reroute through the Philadelphia hub instead of Baltimore." 8 hours? Yeah. It's counterintuitive because Philadelphia is farther north, but the traffic patterns work better, and we can consolidate 2 routes into one. "That's excellent work, Owen." She smiled, the kind of genuine smile managers give when you've actually solved a problem they care about. "Write it up and send me the report by end of week?" "No problem." She left, and I went back to my spreadsheets, letting the numbers absorb me. At noon, Jim from accounting invited me and Jennifer to lunch at the sandwich place down the street. We talked about work and the weather and Jim's theory that the vending machine on the 2nd floor was rigged to steal quarters. Normal, boring, fine. At home, I was equally fine. Victoria came back Monday evening around 9, carrying takeout from the Thai place she liked. We ate in front of the television, watching some reality show about people buying houses in foreign countries. She made comments about the properties. I nodded at appropriate intervals. We exchanged maybe 30 words, all of them meaningless. How was work? Busy. You? Same. Okay. Tuesday was identical. Wednesday, too. We moved around each other like dancers who'd practiced the routine too many times, every step choreographed, every interaction scripted. She made coffee in the morning. I cleaned the kitchen at night. She worked late. I watched television. We existed in the same space without actually touching. But while I was being perfectly normal, I was also paying attention. Tuesday morning, Victoria left at 7:30 in her yoga pants and jacket, carrying her gym bag. The bag was canvas with leather trim, dark gray, expensive looking. She'd bought it about 6 months ago, around the time she'd started this whole fitness routine. I watched from the window as she walked to her car, a white Lexus sedan she'd leased last year, and drove off toward downtown. That evening, she came home at 9:45, showered immediately, and climbed into bed with her phone. I filed it away. Wednesday morning, same routine, yoga pants, jacket, gym bag, 7:30 departure. Wednesday evening, she came home at 10:15, showered immediately, poured herself wine, and spent an hour on her laptop at the kitchen table before bed. I filed that away too. Thursday morning, I called in sick to work. Helen answered on the second ring. Owen, everything okay? Yeah, just not feeling great. Stomach thing. I think I'll work from home today if that's okay. Of course. Feel better. Thanks. I hung up and watched from the window as Victoria left at her usual time. Then I got dressed, grabbed my laptop, and drove downtown. There was a coffee shop called The Daily Grind 3 blocks from Victoria's office building, a small place with outdoor seating and decent Wi-Fi and a clear view of the main entrance. I'd been there once before, maybe a year ago, meeting Victoria for a quick lunch that had turned out to be less lunch and more her checking emails while I ate a sandwich alone. I parked on the street, fed the meter enough quarters for 3 hours, and went inside. The barista was a college-age woman with purple hair and gauges in her ears. What can I get you? Large black coffee and a blueberry muffin. For here or to go? Here. She rang me up, made the coffee with impressive speed, and handed me the muffin in a little paper bag. I took everything to a table outside, positioned so I could see the office building's entrance but wouldn't be obvious to anyone walking in or out. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up a spreadsheet, and pretended to work. Victoria's office was in a mixed-use tower, the kind of building that housed everything from law firms to tech startups to boutique marketing agencies. The entrance was all glass and steel, with a rotating door and a security desk visible just inside. People streamed in and out constantly. Business suits, casual Friday attire, delivery people with packages. At 8:20, I spotted Victoria walking in. She'd changed out of her yoga clothes into a black dress and heels, her hair pulled back, her gym bag nowhere in sight. She must have changed in her car. Or somewhere else. I sipped my coffee and made notes in my spreadsheet. At 9:30, a man walked into the building. Tall, maybe 6'2" or 6'3". Athletic build, the kind that comes from actual training rather than just good genetics. He wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost what I made in a month, with a crisp white shirt and no tie. Aviator sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Dark hair styled with that effortless-looking precision that actually requires significant effort. He moved like someone who expected doors to open before he reached them. I didn't recognize him, but something in my chest tightened anyway. He disappeared into the building, past the security desk without stopping, like he belonged there. I waited. The coffee went cold. I ordered another. The muffin sat uneaten on its paper bag. Around me, people came and went. Morning rush turning into mid-morning lull. The barista changed shifts. A man at the next table talked loudly on his phone about cryptocurrency. At 11:45, the man in the navy suit came back out. He was on his phone, laughing about something, his sunglasses pushed up on his head now. He walked with the same confident stride, past the glass doors and down the sidewalk toward the parking garage 2 blocks south. Victoria didn't come out. I stayed until 1 o'clock, ordered a third coffee I didn't drink, filled my spreadsheet with fake numbers, watched the building entrance until my eyes started to hurt. Victoria never appeared. At 1:30, I gave up and drove past the building on my way home. I took the route that went by the parking garage, a 6-story concrete structure with exposed levels and numbered sections. There, on the 3rd level, visible from the street, a black Range Rover with custom rims and a vanity plate that read Apex 1. I pulled into a loading zone across the street, took out my phone, and zoomed in on the license plate. Clicked. The photo was clear enough to read the numbers and letters. I drove home, uploaded the photo to my private cloud account, and then deleted it from my phone's camera roll. That evening, Victoria came home at 10:30. She smelled like wine and something else. Cologne, expensive, the kind that comes in a black bottle with minimalist labeling. "How was your day?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door and kicking off her heels. "Fine. Yours?" "Exhausting." She went straight to the bedroom. "I'm going to take a shower." While the water ran, I sat on the couch with my laptop and pulled up a website I'd found that claimed to provide vehicle registration information from public DMV records. It cost $30 to run a single license plate search. I entered my credit card information and the license plate number from the Range Rover. Clicked Submit. 10 seconds later, I had a name, Garrett Allen Finch. I opened a new tab and searched the name. The first result was a professional website for Apex Development Group. The header image showed the same man in the navy suit, standing in front of a construction site, arms crossed, looking directly at the camera with that same confident expression. Garrett Finch, founder and CEO, read the bio beneath his photo. Regional real estate developer specializing in luxury residential properties and mixed-use commercial spaces. 20 years of experience transforming urban landscapes across the mid-Atlantic region. The site listed his properties: 3 luxury apartment complexes, 2 renovated historic buildings converted to condos, and 2 nightclub properties in the downtown entertainment district. I clicked through to his social media. His accounts were public. No privacy settings, everything on display. Photos of him at ribbon-cutting ceremonies, charity galas, restaurant openings. Photos of him on yachts, at golf courses, shaking hands with local politicians. In most of the pictures, he wore the same expression: confident, bordering on smug, like someone who'd never heard the word no and wouldn't recognize it if he did. I scrolled back through 6 months of posts. There, 3 months ago, a photo from a charity event at some downtown hotel. Garrett in a tuxedo, holding a champagne glass, surrounded by people in formal wear. And in the background, just visible over his left shoulder, Victoria, wearing a red dress I'd never seen, laughing at something someone off-camera had said. I saved the photo, kept scrolling. 2 months ago, a restaurant opening. Garrett cutting a ribbon with oversized scissors, crowd applauding. Victoria visible in the crowd, clapping, saved. 1 month ago, a private party at one of his properties. Rooftop terrace, city skyline visible behind the crowd. Victoria in the foreground this time, talking to someone I didn't recognize, a wine glass in hand. Saved. She'd never mentioned attending any of these events. Never mentioned knowing Garrett Finch. Never mentioned anything about charity galas or restaurant openings or private parties at luxury properties. I closed my laptop as the shower turned off in the bathroom. Victoria came out wrapped in a towel, her hair wet, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked younger like this, more like the woman I'd married 3 years ago. For a second, I felt something that might have been regret. Then she went to her phone, checked it immediately, smiled at something on the screen. The regret disappeared. "You okay?" she asked, looking up. "Yeah," I said, "just tired." She studied me for a moment, then shrugged and went to get dressed. I sat on the couch and stared at the blank television screen, my mind running through timelines and patterns and probabilities. 4 months of schedule changes. The gym bag that sometimes smelled like chlorine, sometimes like cologne, sometimes like nothing at all. The late nights, the weekend conferences. The phone calls she took in the bathroom with the door closed. The beach photo from Miami. The charity galas. The restaurant openings. Garrett Finch and his Range Rover and his public social media and his vanity license plate. It wasn't proof, not yet. Not the kind of proof that would hold up in court or justify a confrontation or mean anything beyond my own suspicions. But it was enough. Enough to know I wasn't paranoid. Enough to know I wasn't imagining things. Enough to know that the pattern I'd been ignoring was real. And enough to know that I needed to be very, very careful about what I did next. I didn't confront her. That's what people expect in these situations. The explosive argument, the tearful confrontation, the demand for truth that leads to either confession or denial or both. But I'd spent 6 years working in systems analysis. And if there's one thing systems analysis teaches you, it's this: never act on incomplete data. Bad data leads to bad decisions. Bad decisions lead to bad outcomes. So instead of confronting Victoria, I gathered more data. Friday morning, she left at 7:30 as usual. I waited 15 minutes, then got dressed and drove to a FedEx store across town. Not the one near our apartment, not the one near my office, but a third location in a strip mall by the highway where nobody would recognize me. I printed out everything I'd saved to my cloud account. Bank statements, credit card bills, the photos from Garrett Finch's social media, screenshots of Victoria's changed schedule patterns, 23 pages total. The clerk, a bored teenager with braces, didn't look at what I was printing. "That'll be $11.50, he said, I paid cash and left. At home, I put the printed pages in a manila folder and put the folder in the fireproof safe I'd bought the previous weekend. The safe went in the back of my closet, under a stack of old sweaters Victoria never touched. Then I went through our apartment systematically, looking for anything else I should document. In the bathroom, Victoria's birth control pills were in the medicine cabinet, current and up to date. In the bedroom, her jewelry box sat on the dresser. I opened it carefully. Most of the pieces I recognized, gifts from her parents, things she'd owned before we met, the modest engagement ring I'd bought on a payment plan 5 years ago, but there, in the back corner, a gold bracelet I'd never seen. Thin, delicate, expensive looking. No inscription, no card, nothing to indicate where it came from. I took a photo of it with my phone, uploaded it to my cloud account, and deleted the original. Put the jewelry box back exactly how I'd found it. In the kitchen, I checked the recycling bin. Wine bottles, 3 in the past week, all expensive labels. Takeout containers from restaurants downtown, a receipt from a boutique clothing store crumpled at the bottom. One dress, $847. I photographed the receipt. Saturday morning, Victoria announced she had a branding workshop to attend. Where? I asked. That hotel on Riverside, the one with the conference center. What time will you be done? Probably around 5, maybe 6. Want me to pick you up? No, I'll drive. She left at 8 in her yoga clothes, gym bag in hand. I waited 30 minutes, then got in my car and drove to the hotel on Riverside. It was a Marriott, 12 stories, with a conference center attached and a parking garage underneath. I parked on the street half a block away, walked to the parking garage entrance, and scanned the levels visible from the street. No white Lexus. I walked around to the conference center entrance and went inside. The lobby was all beige carpet and artificial plants and a digital board listing the day's events. Johnson Wedding, Ballroom A, 2 p.m. Regional Sales Meeting, Conference Room 4, 9 a.m. Photography Workshop, Conference Room 2, 10 a.m. No Branding Workshop. I went back to my car and drove home. That evening, Victoria returned at 6:15, smelling like chlorine. How was the workshop? I asked. Good. Learned a lot about brand positioning. Who was leading it? A pause. Some consultant from New York. I can't remember his name. Huh? I let it drop. Sunday, we had brunch with her college friend Meredith and Meredith's husband Paul. They were nice people. Meredith worked in graphic design, Paul sold insurance, and they talked about their new house in the suburbs with a kind of enthusiasm that made me simultaneously envious and exhausted. The restaurant was a trendy place in Meredith's neighborhood, all reclaimed wood and Edison bulbs, and a menu that used the word artisanal 6 times. You two should think about moving out of the city, Meredith said over mimosas that cost $14 each. The schools are better, and you get so much more space. Victoria laughed, the sound bright and fake. We're not really the suburbs type. Not yet, Paul said with a knowing grin. Wait until you have kids. Everything changes. That's not happening anytime soon, Victoria said quickly, her voice sharp enough that Meredith and Paul exchanged a glance. I sipped my water and said nothing. We'd talked about kids exactly once, 3 years ago. Right after we'd gotten married, I'd mentioned wanting them someday. Victoria had said, maybe eventually, in a tone that meant never. I'd never brought it up again. Meredith smiled at me, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. What do you think, Owen? I think we're fine where we are. See? Victoria reached over and took my hand, her fingers cold and tight. We're happy. The word happy hung in the air like something fragile. Meredith and Paul exchanged another glance, the kind married couples develop after years together, an entire conversation happening in a single look. Then Meredith launched into a story about their house renovation, and the moment passed. But I kept thinking about Victoria's hand on mine, the coldness of her skin, the performative squeeze, the way she'd let go the second Meredith stopped looking. After brunch, we walked back to our cars in silence. Victoria checked her phone 3 times before we even reached the parking lot. I need to stop by the office, she said as I unlocked my car door. On Sunday? Just for an hour. Big campaign launching Monday. Which client? The athletic wear company. I told you about it. She hadn't. Right, I said. Want me to come with you? No, that's okay. I'll just be answering emails and reviewing materials. Boring stuff. Okay. I drove home alone and watched from our apartment window as Victoria left the parking garage 20 minutes later, heading west toward downtown. Her office was east. I stood at the window for a long time, watching traffic below, thinking about directions and lies and all the ways people deceive each other without saying a word. Monday morning, I called in sick again. Helen sounded concerned. Owen, you never take sick days. Are you okay? Yeah, just something I can't shake. Probably need to see a doctor. Take care of yourself, and actually see a doctor if you need to. I will, thanks. I hung up and got dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, baseball cap. Then I drove back to the daily grind and took up position at the same outdoor table as before. Victoria arrived at 8:20, same as Thursday. Changed into her work clothes somewhere between leaving our apartment and entering her office building. At 9:15, Garrett Finch pulled up in his Range Rover. He parked in a loading zone directly in front of the building, didn't even bother feeding the meter. Just walked in like he owned the place. Maybe he did. Maybe he owned a unit in that building. Maybe he had legitimate business there that had nothing to do with my wife. Maybe. I waited. 11:30. They came out together. Victoria and Garrett walking side by side, not touching, but close. She was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted back, her whole posture relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. They walked half a block to a restaurant I recognized, an upscale Italian place where reservations required 3 weeks' notice. I watched them through the window, watched them sit at a table by the window, watched the waiter bring wine, watched them talk and laugh and share a pasta dish between them. I took photos from across the street, zoomed in enough to clearly show both their faces. They stayed for 90 minutes. When they came out, Garrett put his hand on the small of Victoria's back, guiding her down the sidewalk. She leaned into the touch. They walked back toward the office building, but stopped at the parking garage entrance instead. Garrett pulled out his key fob. The Range Rover's lights blinked. They got in together. I waited to see if Victoria would get back out. She didn't. The Range Rover pulled out of the loading zone and headed north. I didn't follow. Instead, I sat at my table at the daily grind, staring at the photos on my phone, my coffee long gone cold. In one photo, Victoria's face was caught mid-laugh, eyes bright, completely unguarded. I couldn't remember the last time she'd looked at me like that. I couldn't remember the last time she'd looked at me at all. And I uploaded the photos to my cloud account, deleted the originals, and drove home. That night, Victoria came back at 10:30, claiming she'd had drinks with a client. She smelled like wine and expensive cologne. "How was your day?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door. "Fine. Yours?" "Exhausting." She headed for the bedroom. "I'm going to take a shower." While the water ran, I sat on the couch with my laptop and searched for divorce attorneys in our area. The first result was a firm called Peterson and Associates, with offices downtown. The second was a solo practitioner named Donald Pryor, with offices near the courthouse. I read reviews for both. Peterson and Associates had slick marketing and high hourly rates. Donald Pryor had modest ratings, but several reviews mentioning his thoroughness and patience. I called Pryor's office and left a voicemail requesting a consultation. Then I closed my laptop and waited for Victoria to finish her shower. When she came out, I was watching television, some documentary about Antarctic research. She climbed into bed with her phone and scrolled through social media while I pretended to care about penguins. After 20 minutes, her breathing slowed. Her phone slipped from her hand. I waited another 30 minutes to be certain she was asleep. Then I got up quietly and went to the kitchen. Her purse was on the counter where she'd left it, a large leather bag that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I opened it carefully, moving aside her wallet, keys, makeup bag, until I found her phone. It was face down, screen dark. I knew her passcode. She told me years ago, casually, the way couples do when they think transparency equals trust. 4 digits, her birth month and day. I turned the phone over and entered the code. The screen flashed red. Incorrect passcode. I tried again, more carefully. Same result. She'd changed it. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and zipped the purse closed. In the bedroom, Victoria was still asleep, her face peaceful in the dim light from the street. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, thinking about the woman I'd married 3 years ago. She'd been different then. Or maybe I'd been different. Or maybe neither of us had ever been who we pretended to be, and it had just taken this long for the masks to slip. I went back to the living room and sat in the dark, thinking about proof and certainty and the moment when suspicion becomes knowledge. I wasn't there yet, but I was close. Tuesday morning, Donald Pryor called me back. His voice was measured, professional, the kind of tone that suggested he'd had this conversation 1,000 times before. "Mr. Harding, this is Donald Pryor returning your call. You mentioned needing a consultation regarding a family matter?" "Yes," I said. I was in my car in the office parking lot, 20 minutes early for work, watching people stream into the building through my windshield. "I need to understand my options." "Regarding?" My marriage. There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. I see. Are you available this afternoon? I have an opening at 3. I'll be there. His office was in a bland building near the courthouse, all beige walls and fluorescent lighting and the faint smell of burnt coffee. The waiting room had uncomfortable chairs and magazines from 6 months ago and a receptionist who looked like someone's grandmother. Mr. Harding? She said when I walked in. Mr. Pryor will see you in just a moment. Can I get you some coffee? No, thank you. I sat down and tried not to look at the other people waiting. A woman in her 40s with red eyes, a man in a suit checking his phone constantly, a younger woman bouncing her leg, nervous energy radiating off her like heat. All of us here for the same reason, more or less. All of us trying to figure out how to untangle our lives from someone else's. Mr. Harding? Pryor himself stood in the doorway, mid-50s, balding, wearing a rumpled suit that had seen better days. He had the kind of face that made you think of high school math teachers, earnest and slightly tired. I followed him into his office. It was small, cramped with filing cabinets and law books and a desk covered in folders. He gestured to a chair across from him and sat down heavily. So, he said, pulling out a legal pad, tell me about your situation. I told him everything, the timeline of Victoria's changed behavior, the unexplained absences, the lies about conferences and workshops, the man in the navy suit, the lunch I'd witnessed, the Range Rover, the photos from social media. Pryor took notes in neat, precise handwriting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Have you confronted her? He asked. No. Why not? Because I want to understand my legal position first. He nodded slowly. Smart. A lot of people come to me after they've already blown everything up. Makes it harder to protect their interests. He set down his pen. Here's what you need to know. Virginia is an equitable distribution state, which means marital property gets divided fairly. Not necessarily equally, but fairly. The court looks at things like length of marriage, each party's contributions, economic circumstances. What counts as marital property? Generally, anything acquired during the marriage. Your joint accounts, any property bought together, retirement contributions made while married. Your separate property, things you owned before marriage or received as gifts or inheritance, stays separate, assuming you kept it separate. The apartment lease is in her name. Then you have no claim to it. But anything you contributed to rent or utilities during the marriage could be factored into the overall distribution. What about her behavior? Does infidelity matter? Pryor leaned back in his chair. Virginia is one of the few states where fault can still matter, but proving it requires evidence, solid evidence. Photos, communications, witness testimony, and even then, it's not always worth pursuing. Fault-based proceedings are expensive and emotionally draining. Most people opt for no-fault separation after living separate for a year. A year? That's the requirement if you want a no-fault outcome and there are no minor children. You can file on fault grounds immediately if you can prove adultery or other statutory grounds, but like I said, it's complicated. I thought about the photos on my phone. The lunch, the Range Rover, Victoria's hand on Garrett Finch's arm. Is circumstantial evidence enough? I asked. For what purpose? To prove adultery. He shook his head. You need more than suspicious behavior. You need proof of opportunity and inclination. Hotel records, explicit communications, testimony from witnesses who saw them together in compromising positions. The bar is high. So what should I do? Document everything. Bank statements, credit cards, any evidence of her spending or behavior. Open a separate account if you don't have one. Route your paycheck there so you have financial independence. Don't drain joint accounts or hide assets, but do protect yourself. And if you're planning to gather evidence of infidelity, be very careful about how you do it. Virginia has strict laws about privacy and surveillance. You can't record her without consent, can't access her private communications without permission, can't do anything that violates wiretapping or hacking statutes. What can I do? Observe. Document what you see in public spaces. Keep records of inconsistencies. But don't break any laws trying to prove she's breaking her vows. He paused. Mr. Harding, I have to ask, what's your goal here? Do you want to save the marriage or end it? I looked at him for a long moment. I want to understand what's happening, and I want to be ready for whatever comes next. Fair enough. He handed me a business card and a retainer agreement. Think about whether you want to move forward with representation. If you do, we can start building your case. If not, at least you know your options. I took the papers and left. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and harsh. I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at Pryor's business card, thinking about evidence and privacy laws and the distance between suspicion and proof. Then I drove back to work and spent the rest of the afternoon optimizing shipping routes like nothing had changed. Wednesday morning, I followed Victoria. Not with any clear plan, not with any specific goal, just following because I needed to see for myself where she went when she wasn't where she said she'd be. She left at 7:30 as usual. I waited 5 minutes, then pulled out behind her white Lexus, keeping 2 cars between us. She drove toward downtown, took the exit for her office, but then kept going past the turn she should have made. I followed at a distance, my heart rate picking up despite myself. She drove through downtown, past the business district, into a neighborhood of converted warehouses and trendy restaurants. Then she pulled into a parking garage attached to a residential building, one of those luxury places with a gym and a rooftop terrace and rents that started at $3,000 a month. I drove past, circled the block, and parked on the street where I could see the garage entrance. 10 minutes later, Garrett Finch's Range Rover pulled in. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slowly, thinking about what this meant. It meant they were together. It meant the lunch hadn't been a coincidence. It meant Victoria was lying about more than just her schedule. It meant I wasn't crazy. I took photos of the building entrance, the garage, the street signs. Then I pulled up the property management website on my phone and found the building name, the Metropolitan Residences. I called the leasing office. Metropolitan Residences, how can I help you? A cheerful female voice, young, probably early 20s. Hi, I'm interested in touring a unit. Do you have any one-bedrooms available? We do. When would you like to schedule a viewing? What are your hours today? We're open until 6. Great. I'll try to stop by this afternoon. Perfect. Just ask for Brittany at the front desk. I hung up and drove to work. At lunch, I told Jennifer I had a dentist appointment and left early. I drove back to the Metropolitan Residences and parked in the visitor section. The lobby was all marble floors and modern furniture and a front desk where a young woman with a name tag reading Brittany smiled at me. Are you here for a tour? She asked. Yes. I called earlier about one-bedrooms. Perfect. Let me grab the keys. She led me to an elevator and we rode up to the 7th floor. The unit she showed me was nice. Hardwood floors, granite counters, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the river. Expensive, professional, soulless. The building has amazing amenities, Brittany said, launching into her practiced speech. 24-hour gym, rooftop terrace, parking garage, package concierge. Very secure, key fob access only, cameras in all common areas. How many units in the building? I asked. 96, mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Do you know who lives here? I mean, what kind of residents? Mostly young professionals, some students whose parents can afford the rent. She laughed. A few business owners. It's a great community. Anyone I might know? I tried to sound casual. I work downtown, thought maybe some colleagues live here. I can't really give out resident information, she said apologetically. Privacy rules, you know. Of course. Sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. We finished the tour and I told her I'd think about it. She gave me a brochure with floor plans and pricing. One bedroom started at $3,200 a month. In my car, I pulled up the property records website and searched for the Metropolitan Residences. The building was owned by Apex Development Group, Garrett Finch's company. I sat there for a long moment, letting that information settle. Then I drove back to Victoria's office building and waited. She came out at 5:30, alone, walking to the parking garage with her phone pressed to her ear. She was smiling, animated, talking to someone who clearly mattered. I followed her home, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice. She pulled into our building's garage. I circled the block twice, then came in behind her. By the time I got upstairs, she was already in the bedroom, changing out of her work clothes. Hey, I said from the doorway. She jumped slightly. You scared me. Sorry, how was work? Long, I'm exhausted. She pulled on sweatpants and a t-shirt. What do you want for dinner? Whatever's easy. We ordered pizza and ate in front of the television, some crime show playing in the background. Victoria checked her phone constantly, smiling at messages I couldn't see. I watched her and thought about Garrett Finch's building and his Range Rover and his hand on her back. I thought about privacy laws and evidence and proof, and I thought about what would happen when I finally had enough. Thursday, I took another sick day. Helen was starting to sound genuinely worried. Owen, seriously, are you okay? You've never taken this many sick days. I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon, I lied. Should have some answers soon. Okay, take care of yourself. Instead of going to a doctor, I drove back to the Metropolitan Residences and parked across the street. I had a thermos of coffee, a protein bar, and a clear view of the garage entrance. At 8:15, Victoria's Lexus pulled in. At 8:30, Garrett's Range Rover followed. I waited. 9:30, nothing. 10:30, nothing. 11, nothing. At 11:45, a car pulled up behind me, a police cruiser. The officer got out and walked to my window. I rolled it down, trying to look calm. "Morning," he said. He was young, maybe late 20s, with that careful cop posture that suggested he was ready for anything. "Mind if I ask what you're doing here?" "Just waiting for someone." "Who?" "My wife. She's touring an apartment here." "For 2.5 hours?" "She's very thorough." He studied me for a moment. "Can I see some ID?" I handed over my license. He walked back to his cruiser, probably running my name through whatever database cops use. A few minutes later, he came back. "Mr. Harding, I'm going to need you to move along. We've had some complaints about a vehicle parked here for extended periods." "Complaints from who?" "Building management. This is private property, and they're within their rights to ask you to leave." I looked past him at the metropolitan residences. Someone had been watching. Someone had called the cops. Maybe Garrett. Maybe a concerned neighbor. Maybe just bad luck. "No problem," I said. "I'll go." "Appreciate it." I started the engine and drove away slowly, watching the cop in my rearview mirror until I turned the corner. My phone rang as I was heading back toward home. "Unknown number," I answered. "Hello? Owen?" Victoria's voice, sharp with concern. "Where are you?" "Driving. Why?" "I just got a call from the Metropolitan. They said someone was asking about me during a tour yesterday, and then today, the police had to remove someone from the property who claimed to be waiting for his wife." My stomach dropped. "What? Was that you?" "Why would I be at the Metropolitan?" "That's what I'm asking." "I don't even know where that is." A pause, long enough that I could hear her breathing. "Owen, if you're following me..." "I'm not following you. I was at the doctor. I told Helen I had an appointment." "Then why did the police report match your car?" "What did they tell you, exactly?" "Just that someone matching your description was parked outside the building for hours." "Lots of people have silver Hondas, Vicky." Another pause. "If you're spying on me, we need to have a serious conversation. I'm not spying on you, but while we're having serious conversations, why don't you tell me why you're so concerned about who's watching that particular building?" Silence. "I have to go," she said finally. "Vicky..." She hung up. I drove the rest of the way home with my hands tight on the steering wheel, my mind racing through implications and consequences. She knew. Not everything, maybe, but enough to be suspicious, enough to be worried. I'd pushed too hard, gotten too close, been too obvious, and now I needed to be very, very careful about my next move. At home, I opened my laptop and went through my cloud account, making sure everything was backed up and secure. The photos, the bank statements, the timeline, all of it encrypted, all of it safe. Then I deleted my browsing history, cleared my cache, and shut down the computer. When Victoria came home that evening at 9, she was cold and distant. She made herself dinner without asking if I wanted any. She ate in the bedroom with the door closed. I sat in the living room and stared at the television without seeing it, thinking about mistakes and evidence and the difference between knowing something and proving it. Around 11, she came out and stood in the doorway. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay." "Are you having me followed?" "No." "Then explain the Metropolitan thing." "I told you. Someone made a mistake. Wrong car, wrong person." "The building manager said the person asked about residents, specifically asked if there were business owners living there." I'd forgotten about that. "The casual question to Brittany during the tour, the one that had seemed harmless at the time." "That wasn't me," I said. "Then who was it?" "I don't know, Victoria. Maybe you should ask Garrett Finch." Her face went pale. "What?" "The guy who owns the building. The guy you've been having lunch with. The guy whose Range Rover is parked at your office every other day. You are following me." "I'm paying attention. There's a difference." She stared at me, her expression cycling through anger and fear and something else I couldn't read. "This is insane. You're being paranoid and jealous and..." "Am I?" "Garrett is a client. We're working on a campaign for his properties." "Is that why you go to his building in the morning, for work?" "I'm not discussing this with you when you're acting crazy. I'm not the one lying about where I go every day." "I'm not lying." "Then where were you last Saturday? The branding workshop that didn't exist?" She opened her mouth, closed it. "I got the date wrong. It was the Saturday before." "No, it wasn't. I checked." "You checked? You're actually checking up on me?" "You changed your phone password." That stopped her. She looked at me for a long moment, her face unreadable. I changed it because my company requires updated security protocols, she said finally. Not everything is about you, Owen. But some things are, like the $800 dress I never saw you wear, like the hotel charges on your credit card, like the jewelry in your drawer that I didn't give you. Her expression hardened. You went through my things? I went through our joint filing cabinet, the one where we keep our shared financial records. My personal credit card isn't shared. But you gave me access to the password manager, remember? 2 years ago when you locked yourself out of your email on vacation? She was breathing hard now, her hands clenched at her sides. You had no right. I had every right to protect myself. From what? From whatever you're doing with Garrett Finch. I'm not doing anything with Garrett. Then why are you lying? I'm not... She stopped, took a breath. I work with him, that's all. And I'm sorry if my job requires me to attend events and meetings and have a life outside this apartment, but that doesn't mean I'm... Say it. What? Say what you're not doing. Say you're not having an affair. The words hung in the air between us like something sharp. Victoria stared at me, her face pale, her eyes bright with tears or anger or both. I can't believe you think that, she said quietly. Then tell me I'm wrong. You're wrong. Prove it. I don't have to prove anything to you. Yes, you do. That's how marriage works. Trust, but verify. She laughed, a harsh sound. That's not trust, Owen. That's surveillance. Call it what you want. But I'm not crazy, and I'm not paranoid, and I'm not going to pretend everything's fine when it clearly isn't. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I think you should sleep on the couch tonight. Fine. She went into the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the couch in the dark, my heart still racing, replaying the conversation in my head. I'd shown my hand too early, revealed too much. Now she knew I was watching, knew I suspected, knew enough to be careful. But I'd also learned something important. She hadn't denied it. Not really. She'd deflected, redirected, accused me of paranoia, but she hadn't looked me in the eye and said, I'm not having an affair. Because she couldn't lie that directly. Because even Victoria had limits. I pulled out my phone and opened my cloud account, looking through everything I'd documented. The photos, the timeline, the financial records. It still wasn't enough for a divorce court. Pryor had been clear about that. But it was enough for me, and now I needed to figure out what to do with that knowledge. Friday morning, I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and the certainty that everything had changed. Victoria was already gone, left early before I was awake, avoiding another confrontation. Her coffee cup sat in the sink, lipstick on the rim, a small act of domesticity that felt like mockery. I called Helen before I could talk myself out of it. Owen, how are you feeling? Better. I'll be in Monday. Good. We've missed you this week. Everything okay? Yeah, just needed some time. Well, take the weekend. Rest up. I hung up and stared at my phone, thinking about what came next. The smart move would be to back off. Let things cool down. Stop following, stop investigating, stop pushing until Victoria let her guard down again. But I was done being smart. I was done being patient. I was done pretending I didn't know what I knew. Instead, I spent Friday doing something I should have done weeks ago. I looked up Garrett Finch's schedule. His social media was still public, still full of self-promotion and networking and photos of him at various events. And conveniently, he'd posted his entire month's schedule in a calendar format, the kind of thing entrepreneurs do when they want to look busy and important. Today, Friday, site inspection, new property, 10 a.m., Harbor District. I drove to the Harbor District. It was a gentrifying area on the waterfront, old industrial buildings being converted into lofts and restaurants and art galleries. Garrett's company had 2 projects here according to his website, one finished, one under construction. I found the construction site easily enough, a 5-story building wrapped in scaffolding and construction fencing, with signs proclaiming Apex Development Group presents Harbor View Luxury Residences. I parked down the street and waited. At 10:15, the Range Rover pulled up. Garrett got out wearing a hard hat and a suit that probably cost more than my car, followed by 2 other men in suits and hard hats. They walked through the construction entrance, disappearing into the building. I waited another 5 minutes, then got out of my car and walked closer. The construction site was noisy. Power tools, shouting workers, the beep of machinery backing up. Nobody paid attention to one more person standing on the sidewalk, looking at the building through the chain-link fence. Through a gap in the scaffolding, I could see Garrett on the 3rd floor, pointing at something and talking animatedly to his companions. He gestured with his hands, that same confident posture, like he owned the world. Maybe he did own this world. His buildings, his company, his affair with someone else's wife. I took photos through the fence, not of anything incriminating, just him at his job site, doing normal business things. But having photos felt important somehow, like I was gathering pieces of a puzzle I didn't quite understand yet. After 20 minutes, I left and drove home. Victoria came back that evening at 8, earlier than usual. She didn't say anything when she came in, just went straight to the bedroom and started packing a small overnight bag. "What are you doing?" I asked from the doorway. "I'm staying at Meredith's tonight." "Why?" "Because I need space. Because you're acting paranoid. Because I can't deal with this right now." "Victoria, don't." She zipped the bag closed and faced me. "I need you to hear me very clearly, Owen. I am not having an affair. I work with Garrett Finch professionally. That's it. And I'm sorry if my job requires me to take meetings and attend events and occasionally tour properties, but that's what I do. And if you can't trust me, then we have bigger problems than you think. I want to trust you. Then do it. Show me your phone." "What?" "Your phone. If there's nothing to hide, show me." She laughed, a bitter sound. "Absolutely not. That's a complete violation of privacy." "Privacy? We're married." "That doesn't mean you get to go through my personal communications whenever you feel insecure." "I'm not insecure. I'm informed. You're paranoid." She picked up her bag. "I'll be back Sunday night. Maybe by then you'll have calmed down enough to have a rational conversation." She left. I stood in the empty apartment, listening to her footsteps fade down the hallway, the elevator ding, the silence that followed. Then I went to the bedroom and looked around with fresh eyes. If Victoria was careful enough to change her phone password, she was probably careful enough not to leave evidence lying around. But people make mistakes. People get careless. People forget that someone else is watching. I started with her nightstand drawer. Charger cables, hand lotion, a sleep mask. Nothing interesting. Her dresser drawers, clothes folded neatly, underwear, socks. Nothing. The closet. Her side was organized by color and type, everything on matching hangers. Shoes lined up below, purses on the top shelf. I pulled down the purses one by one, checking pockets and compartments. In a black leather clutch she hadn't used in months, I found a receipt. The Metropolitan Residences. Monthly parking fee. $250. Dated 4 months ago. I photographed it and put it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I kept searching. In a shoebox of old birthday cards and photos, tucked between images of her college friends and family gatherings, I found a printed photo I'd never seen before. Victoria and Garrett Finch standing on a rooftop terrace at sunset, his arm around her shoulders, her head leaning against him, both of them smiling at the camera like they were the only two people in the world. The timestamp in the corner, 6 months ago, before her schedule had changed, before the gym routine had started, before I'd noticed anything was wrong. Which meant this had been going on longer than I'd thought. Which meant the last 6 months of my marriage had been a performance. I sat on the floor of the closet with the photo in my hand, staring at Victoria's smile, at Garrett's possessive arm, at the casual intimacy of two people who belonged together. Something in my chest cracked. Not my heart. That had been breaking slowly for months, one small cut at a time. This was something else. Something colder. Something that felt like the moment before you make a decision you can't take back. I photographed the picture, put it back in the shoebox, and put the shoebox back on the shelf. Then I left the apartment and drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just drove through the city, past Victoria's office, past the Metropolitan Residences, past the restaurants where I'd seen them together. The streets were busy with Friday night traffic, people going to bars and dinners and movies, normal people with normal problems. I ended up at Donald Pryor's office building. It was closed, dark, locked for the weekend, but I sat in the parking lot with the engine running, staring at the third-floor window where I'd sat 2 days ago, listening to a man explain how to untangle my life from someone else's. My phone rang. Unknown number again, I answered. "Hello? Mr. Harding?" A male voice, unfamiliar, professional. "This is Bradley Morrison with Apex Development Group. I'm calling regarding your visit to the Metropolitan Residences earlier this week." My stomach tightened. "Okay. Mr. Finch wanted me to reach out personally to address some concerns. We take the privacy and security of our residents very seriously, and we've had reports of someone asking questions about specific residents and conducting surveillance of the property." I toured an apartment. That's not surveillance. The tour was Wednesday. The surveillance was Thursday. That wasn't me? "Mr. Harding, we have your license plate on file from when you were asked to leave by police. We also have security footage from the lobby during your tour. I'm calling as a courtesy to inform you that if you return to the property or continue any surveillance activities, we will pursue legal action, including restraining orders and harassment charges. I'm not harassing anyone. Then we won't have any problems. Have a good evening, Mr. Harding. He hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, thinking about security footage and legal threats, and the fact that Garrett Finch knew my name now, which meant Victoria had told him, which meant they'd discussed me, which meant I was officially part of their story, the obstacle they had to navigate, the problem they needed to solve. I drove home and spent the rest of the night documenting everything I'd found, the parking receipt, the photo, the timeline, the phone call from Apex Development Group. I wrote it all down in a file on my laptop, organized chronologically, cross-referenced with bank statements and credit card records and my own observations. By 3 a.m, I had a document that was 30 pages long and told a complete story. Not a story I could tell a judge. Not yet, not with the evidence I had. But a story I understood. Victoria had started seeing Garrett Finch at least 6 months ago, probably after meeting him through work. She'd been parking at his building for 4 months, which meant she had regular access, probably to his personal unit, probably during hours when she should have been at work or the gym. She'd spent thousands of dollars on clothes and jewelry and hotel stays, all on her personal credit card, all hidden from our joint finances. She'd lied about conferences and workshops and client meetings and branding seminars. She'd changed her schedule, her habits, her phone password, her entire life to accommodate this other relationship. And when I'd started noticing, started questioning, she'd accused me of paranoia and jealousy and insecurity. Classic deflection, classic gaslighting, classic behavior of someone who knows they're guilty but refuses to admit it. And I closed my laptop and lay on the couch in the dark, thinking about what came next. Pryor had said I needed proof, hotel records, explicit communications, witness testimony. I didn't have any of that. What I had was circumstantial evidence and pattern recognition and the parking receipt for a building owned by the man my wife was definitely not having an affair with. It wasn't enough for a court, but maybe it was enough for something else. Maybe it was enough to stop playing defense and start playing offense. Maybe it was enough to stop trying to prove what I already knew and start thinking about what I was going to do about it. Saturday, I did nothing. I stayed home. I cleaned the apartment. I did laundry. I went to the grocery store and bought food for one person instead of two. I watched television. I answered work emails. I acted like a normal person having a normal weekend, but inside, I was planning. Sunday morning, Victoria texted. Coming home around 6. Can we talk? I replied, sure. She arrived at 6:15, looking tired, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing sweatpants and one of my old college t-shirts that she'd claimed years ago. She sat on the couch. I sat in the chair across from her. I talked to Meredith, she said. About us. About what you've been saying. And? And she thinks maybe we should see a marriage counselor. A counselor. Yes. Someone neutral who can help us work through this communication breakdown. Communication breakdown? Owen, you think I'm having an affair. I'm not. But clearly there's something broken between us if you don't trust me. So maybe we need professional help? I looked at her for a long moment. She looked sincere, vulnerable, exactly like someone who wanted to save her marriage. But I'd found the photo. I'd seen the parking receipt. I'd watched her get into Garrett Finch's Range Rover. Okay, I said, let's see a counselor. Her face flooded with relief. Really? Really. Thank you. I'll find someone this week. Someone good. Sounds good. She smiled, reached across the space between us, and took my hand. I know things have been hard lately, but we can fix this. We can get back to how things used to be. I squeezed her hand and thought about the photo of her leaning against Garrett Finch on a rooftop terrace 6 months ago. I thought about the performance we were both giving now, both pretending to believe each other, both playing roles in a relationship that had ended months ago without either of us officially saying so. Yeah, I said, we can fix this. She leaned in and kissed me. It was brief, almost chaste, the kind of kiss you give someone out of obligation rather than desire. When she pulled back, she was still smiling. I'm going to take a shower, she said. Then maybe we can order dinner? Stay in tonight? Sure. She disappeared into the bathroom. I heard the water start, heard her humming something I didn't recognize. I sat in the chair and stared at my hands, thinking about trust and proof and the moment when you stop trying to save something and start thinking about how to walk away from it with your dignity intact. Or maybe not your dignity, maybe something else, maybe your revenge. Monday morning, everything went back to normal. Victoria left at 7:30. I went to work at 8. We didn't discuss the weekend or the fight or her promise to find a marriage counselor. We just moved through our routines like actors who'd memorized their blocking. At the office, Helen greeted me with genuine warmth. "Owen, good to see you back. Feeling better?" "Much better, thanks." "Good, because we need your brain on the Western distribution project. It's a mess." I spent the morning in meetings, reviewing logistics reports, offering solutions to routing problems that other analysts had been struggling with for weeks. It felt good to solve problems that actually had solutions, problems where the variables were knowable and the outcomes were predictable, unlike my marriage. At lunch, I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Donald Pryor. "Mr. Harding," he said, "have you made a decision about representation?" "Not yet, but I have some questions about evidence." "All right. If I have proof that my wife has been parking at a property owned by another man, and I have photos of them together at various events, and I have credit card statements showing unexplained expenses, is that enough to establish fault?" A pause. "It's suggestive, but probably not sufficient on its own. You'd need more direct evidence." "Why? What have you found?" I told him about the parking receipt and the photo and the security footage threat from Apex Development Group. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. "That's more than you had last week. But here's the problem. Parking at someone's building isn't proof of infidelity. Neither are photos from public events. And credit card expenses, unless they're for hotels or gifts with explicit romantic intent, won't meet the threshold either." So what would meet the threshold? Testimony from a witness who saw them in bed together. Hotel security footage, text messages, or emails explicitly discussing the affair. Photos of them entering a residence together and not leaving for hours. Something concrete that a judge can't dismiss as friendship or business. I can't get any of that without breaking privacy laws. Correct. So what do I do? Another pause. "Mr. Harding, I'm going to be honest with you. Most people in your situation don't prove fault. They just wait out the year separation and file no fault. It's cleaner, cheaper, less emotionally devastating." "Is there a reason you need to prove fault?" I thought about that. Was there a reason? Victoria and I didn't have kids. We didn't have shared property. Our finances were largely separate. In practical terms, a no-fault proceeding would be simple. Split the joint account, go our separate ways, move on. But it wasn't about the practical terms. It was about the principle. It was about the fact that she'd lied to my face, repeatedly, for months. It was about the fact that she'd made me feel crazy for noticing the obvious. It was about the fact that she'd accused me of paranoia while hiding photos of another man in our closet. "No," I said finally. "No good reason, just ego." Pryor chuckled. "Ego is expensive in family court. Think hard about whether it's worth it." "I will, thanks." I hung up and sat in my car, watching people walk in and out of the office building, living their normal lives with their normal problems. Then I pulled out my phone and opened social media. Victoria's accounts were semi-private, but I'd been following her for years, obviously. I scrolled through her recent posts, carefully curated photos of coffee shops and sunsets, and inspirational quotes about ambition and success. Nothing personal. Nothing about us. Nothing that suggested she was married at all except for her last name, which she'd kept when we got married because she said it sounded better professionally. I went to Garrett Finch's account. Still public, still full of self-promotion. I scrolled back through 6 months of posts, looking for Victoria. She appeared in the background of 6 different photos. 7 if you counted the reflection in a window during one of his building tours. Never tagged, never mentioned, just there. I took screenshots of each one and added them to my documentation file. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I created a fake profile, joined today. No profile picture, just a generic avatar. A common name, David Mitchell. No personal information, no friends, no posts, just a blank account. And I followed Garrett Finch. He accepted the follow request within an hour. Tuesday evening, Victoria came home at a reasonable hour, 7 o'clock, carrying takeout from our favorite Thai place. "Peace offering," she said, holding up the bag. "I got your usual." "Thanks." And we ate together at the kitchen table, making small talk about work and weather and nothing that mattered. She told me about a new campaign she was working on for an athletic wear company. I told her about the Western distribution project. We were both very good at pretending. "I found a counselor," she said between bites of pad thai. "Dr. Lisa Brennan. She has availability next Thursday at 6. "Okay." "She specializes in communication issues and trust rebuilding. I read some of her reviews. She's supposed to be really good." "Sounds fine." Victoria smiled. "This is going to help us, Owen. I really think it will." "Yeah." After dinner, she went to take a shower. I cleaned up the dishes and checked my phone. The fake David Mitchell account had a notification. Garrett Finch had posted a new photo. Him at a restaurant. Wine glass raised in a toast. Caption reading, celebrating new partnerships and exciting ventures. Blessed entrepreneur success. And in the background, barely visible but definitely there, Victoria, wearing the black dress I'd never seen, smiling, posted 30 minutes ago, which meant they were together right now, which meant Victoria hadn't come home at 7 because she wanted to make peace. She'd come home at 7 because she had plans that didn't include me. I looked at the bathroom door, heard the shower still running, and made a decision. I went to the bedroom and opened Victoria's laptop. She'd left it on the dresser, closed, but not shut down. I opened it carefully. It required a password, but I knew she used the same password for everything that wasn't her phone. Her birth year plus her mother's maiden name. Simple, predictable, secure enough for most purposes. It worked. The laptop opened to her email. I pulled up her sent folder and started scrolling. There, 3 months ago, an email to Garrett Finch. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. This is crazy and terrifying and exactly what I needed. When can I see you again? I took a photo with my phone. Kept scrolling. 2 months ago. I hate lying to Owen, but I don't know how to stop. This thing between us, it's become more real than my actual marriage. What does that say about me? Photo. 1 month ago. You asked if I'm going to leave him. The honest answer is I don't know. Part of me wants to, but part of me is scared. What if we don't work outside of these stolen hours? What if the excitement is all that's holding us together? Photo. Last week. Owen is asking questions. He knows something's wrong. I need to be more careful. Maybe we should cool things off for a while. And Garrett's response, don't let him make you feel guilty. You deserve to be happy. We'll figure this out together. Photo. The shower turned off. I closed the email, closed the laptop, put it back exactly where it had been, and walked out of the bedroom as casually as I could manage. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. But I'd done it. I had proof. Explicit communications discussing the affair, in writing, dated and time-stamped. More than enough for any divorce court. More than enough to meet the false standard Pryor had described. More than enough to know, without any doubt, that everything I'd suspected was true. Victoria came out of the bathroom in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. You okay? She asked. You look pale. Fine, just tired. Long day? Yeah. She kissed my cheek and went to get dressed. I stood in the living room with my phone in my pocket, containing photos that would end my marriage, and tried to figure out how I felt. Vindicated, yes. Angry, definitely. But also something else. Something colder and more calculating. I'd been playing defense this whole time, watching, documenting, trying to prove what I already knew. Now I had proof. Now I could stop defending and start attacking. Now I could stop trying to save a marriage that was already over and start thinking about how to make sure Victoria understood exactly what she'd lost. Wednesday, I called in sick again. Helen didn't even sound surprised anymore. Owen, seriously, what's going on? Personal stuff, family emergency, I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to help? No, but I appreciate it. I'll be back next week, I promise. Take care of yourself. Instead of going to work, I drove to Donald Pryor's office with my phone full of photos. He looked at them carefully, zooming in on the text, reading each email with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen this same story play out 100 times. This is good, he said finally. This meets the fault standard. With these communications, we can file immediately on grounds of adultery. What happens then? We serve her with papers. She either admits fault or contests it. If she contests, we present this evidence in court. If she admits it, we negotiate a settlement. How long does it take? Depends on whether she fights. Could be 3 months, could be a year. But with this evidence, she probably won't fight the fault finding. She'll negotiate. What do I get? Depends on what you want. Marital property gets divided equitably. You'd likely get half the joint account, maybe some compensation for rent and utilities you paid during the marriage. But since you don't have kids or shared real estate, it's mostly just financial separation. What about public record? Do these emails become public? Court filings are public, yes. The emails would be part of the record. Anyone could request copies. I thought about that. Victoria worked in marketing, in a field where reputation mattered. Her clients, her colleagues, her professional network, all of them could potentially see those emails. All of them could know what she'd done. What if I wanted to make sure people knew? I asked. Pryor looked at me sharply. I'd advise against that. Deliberately publicizing private communications could open you up to defamation suits, invasion of privacy claims. It's not worth the risk. But the court filings are public. Yes, but there's a difference between public record and active publicity. If you file and someone requests the documents, that's their choice. If you actively distribute those documents or post them online, that's you making a choice that could have legal consequences. Understood. He studied me for a moment. Mr. Harding, I need to ask, what's your goal here? Is it just to end the marriage, or is it something else? I thought about Victoria's face when she'd told me I was paranoid, about the way she'd kissed me after promising to find a counselor, about the photo of her leaning against Garrett Finch on a rooftop terrace. I want her to understand what she did, I said. I want consequences. Consequences cost money. Legal fees, court costs, time. Are you prepared for that? Yes. And you understand that once we file on fault grounds, there's no going back? No reconciliation, no second chances? I understand. He nodded slowly. All right. Then let's talk about strategy. We spent the next hour planning. Pryor explained the filing process, the timeline, the likely responses from Victoria's attorney once she hired one. He walked me through asset division, the importance of separating finances immediately, the need to document any shared property or debts. One more thing, he said as I was leaving. Don't do anything dramatic. Don't confront her with this evidence. Don't threaten her. Don't post anything online or contact Garrett Finch or do anything that could be construed as harassment. Just let the legal process work. I won't. Good. Because the fastest way to lose the moral high ground is to act like the wronged spouse who can't control their emotions. Stay calm, stay smart, and let the system do its job. I shook his hand and left. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and harsh. I sat in my car for a few minutes, thinking about systems and processes and the difference between legal revenge and personal revenge. Pryor was right. The smart thing was to file, let the courts handle it, walk away clean. But I wasn't sure I wanted to be smart anymore. I wasn't sure I wanted to be the reasonable one, the understanding one, the one who took the high road while Victoria and Garrett Finch continued their affair without consequences beyond paperwork and asset division. I wanted them to feel what I'd felt. I wanted them to understand what they'd destroyed. I wanted consequences that hurt, and I was starting to have ideas about how to make that happen. Thursday evening, Victoria reminded me about the counseling appointment. Dr. Brennan's office is on Market Street, she said, applying makeup at the bathroom mirror. I'll meet you there at 6. Don't be late. I won't. She finished her makeup, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. I have a client dinner tonight, so I'll be home late. Don't wait up. Who's the client? She paused, hand on the doorknob. The hotel chain, remember? The boutique places I told you about. Right, have fun. She left. I waited exactly 3 minutes, then followed. Her Lexus headed downtown, but not toward any restaurants I recognized. Instead, she drove to the Metropolitan Residences and pulled into the parking garage. I drove past, circled the block, and parked 2 streets over where I had a partial view of the building entrance. 20 minutes later, Garrett Finch's Range Rover pulled in. I sat there for a moment, thinking about client dinners and lies and the marriage counselor we were supposed to see in 2 hours. Victoria wasn't planning to go. She'd made the appointment to placate me, to buy herself time, to maintain the performance. But she had no intention of actually working on our marriage. I pulled out my phone and called Dr. Brennan's office. The receptionist answered. Hi, this is Owen Harding. My wife Victoria and I have an appointment at 6 today. I'm afraid we need to cancel. Oh no, is everything all right? Family emergency. We'll need to reschedule. Of course. I'll make a note. Hope everything works out. Thanks. I hung up and stared at the Metropolitan Residences, thinking about opportunities and risks and the point where careful planning becomes reckless action. Then I drove to a hardware store across town. I bought work gloves, a small crowbar, black spray paint, and a package of industrial zip ties. The clerk, a middle-aged man with a name tag reading Frank, rang me up without interest. Doing some home repairs? He asked. Something like that. I paid cash and left. At home, I changed into dark clothes, black jeans, black hoodie, running shoes. I put the supplies in a backpack along with a flashlight and the photos I'd taken of Garrett Finch's license plate. Then I sat on the couch and waited for it to get dark. Around 10 o'clock, I drove back to the Metropolitan Residences. The parking garage had minimal security, a gate that required a key fob, but the pedestrian entrance was just a regular door. I waited until a resident came out, caught the door before it closed, and walked in like I belonged there. The garage was dimly lit, concrete pillars casting long shadows. I found the Range Rover on the 3rd level, parked in a spot marked Reserved Unit 7B. I looked around. No cameras visible in this section. No security guards, no other people. I pulled on the work gloves and got to work. First, I used the crowbar to pop the valve stems off all 4 tires. The air hissed out slowly, the Range Rover settling lower and lower as the tires deflated. Not slashed, that would be obvious vandalism. Just deflated, which could be chalked up to bad luck or faulty valve stems. Next, I took the zip ties and secured them around the drive shaft and axle, tight enough that they'd make horrible grinding noises if someone tried to drive the vehicle, but not visible unless you got underneath and looked. Finally, I spray painted a message on the garage floor in front of the Range Rover. Large black letters. Apex of nothing not threatening. Not explicit, just cryptic enough to be unsettling. The whole thing took less than 5 minutes. I walked out the way I'd come in, got in my car, and drove home. My hands were steady. My breathing was calm. I felt nothing except a cold satisfaction that something had finally been done. At midnight, my phone rang. Victoria. Owen, where are you? Home, where are you? A pause. I'm still at dinner. It's running late. Okay. Have you been home all evening? Yeah, why? No reason. I'll be back soon. She hung up. I lay on the couch in the dark and waited. She came home at 1:30, agitated, her face flushed. She went straight to the bedroom without saying anything, and I heard her on the phone, voice low and urgent. Don't know who would do that. Maybe random vandals. The garage isn't that secure. No, I'm sure it's not. Garrett, calm down. Yes, I know it's expensive. Fine, call the police if you want, but what are they going to do? Okay. I'll talk to you tomorrow. She came back out. That was a colleague. Someone vandalized his car tonight. He's really upset. That sucks. Yeah. She looked at me carefully. You've been home all night? I told you I have. Right, okay. She went back to the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about valve stems and zip ties and the look on Victoria's face when she'd asked where I'd been. She suspected. Maybe not with certainty, but with enough doubt to ask. Good. Let her wonder. Let her feel what it's like to question everything. Friday morning, Victoria was gone before I woke up. No coffee cup in the sink, no note, just absence. I went to work and acted normal. Attended meetings, reviewed logistics reports, had lunch with Jennifer and Jim. Everything fine. At 3 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Garrett Finch. We need to talk. Meet me at Palmer's Coffee on 5th Street at 6 p.m. Come alone. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I replied, Okay. Palmer's Coffee was a chain place, bright and loud and full of people. Safe, public. The kind of place where 2 men could have a conversation without anyone caring. I arrived at 5:50 and ordered a black coffee. Sat at a table in the back with a clear view of the entrance. Garrett walked in at 6 exactly, wearing jeans and a polo shirt, sunglasses pushed up on his head. He looked around, spotted me, and walked over. He didn't sit down. You're Owen, he said. I am. Victoria's husband. Technically, yes. His jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? It means she's not acting much like a wife lately. He pulled out the chair and sat down heavily. Look, I'm not here to have that conversation. I'm here because someone vandalized my car last night, and I think it was you. Why would you think that? Because Victoria told me you've been following her, that you showed up at my building, that you've been acting paranoid and unstable. Unstable. Her words, not mine. I sipped my coffee. Did you file a police report? Yes. What did they say? That without cameras or witnesses, there's nothing they can do. It's just property damage. Could be random. Could be. He leaned forward. But we both know it wasn't random, so here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from Victoria. You're going to stay away from me. You're going to stay away from my properties. And if anything else happens, anything at all, I'll make sure you regret it. How? What? How will you make me regret it? Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. There's a difference? His face flushed. You think this is funny? No, I think it's pathetic. You're having an affair with another man's wife, and you're trying to intimidate me into accepting it quietly. I'm not. Victoria and I are colleagues. Is that what you call it? She works for me, that's all. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the emails I'd photographed, the one where Victoria wrote about how amazing their night together had been. His expression went from anger to shock to something like fear. Where did you get that? Doesn't matter. That's private communication. You can't. Actually, I can. It's from a shared device in my home. Perfectly legal. You're bluffing. Am I? I showed him another email, then another. He sat back in his chair, breathing hard. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly. Victoria is still my wife, and what you've been doing, sneaking around, lying, manipulating her into thinking this is somehow okay, it ends now. You can't control her. I'm not trying to control her. I'm trying to make sure there are consequences for both of you. Consequences? Legal ones, financial ones, social ones. Your company has a reputation, doesn't it? Local developer, big projects, relationships with city officials. What happens when your investors and business partners find out you're the kind of man who pursues married women? What happens to those relationships? His face paled. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? That's blackmail. No, it's information. Public information, once I file for divorce on fault grounds. Court records are public, Garrett. Anyone can access them. Your name will be in those records. These emails will be in those records. And then it's just a matter of who decides to look. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Stay away from me. You stay away from my wife. Your wife came to me. She wanted this. Did she want the lies? Did she want the guilt? Did she want to sneak around and hide and feel like a criminal? Or did you just make it easy for her to avoid dealing with our problems? He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and walked out. I sat there with my coffee, watching him leave, feeling that same cold satisfaction. Not revenge yet. Just pressure. Just the beginning of understanding. Saturday morning, Victoria confronted me in the kitchen. Garrett told me you met with him. He asked me to. You threatened him. I warned him. What's the difference? A threat implies intent to harm. A warning just clarifies consequences. She slammed her coffee cup on the counter. You can't do this, Owen. You can't harass my colleagues because you're jealous. Colleagues? Yes. Show me your phone. Excuse me? If he's just a colleague, show me your communications with him. Prove there's nothing inappropriate. I don't have to prove anything to you. Then I don't have to believe anything you say. She stared at me, her face cycling through expressions. Anger, fear, calculation. I want you to move out, she said finally. No. What? The lease is in your name. You move out. This is my apartment, and I've been paying half the rent for 3 years. I have tenants' rights. You want me gone, you'll need to formally evict me. That takes time, paperwork, legal process. You're being ridiculous. I'm being practical. She grabbed her phone and purse. I'm staying at Meredith's again. Give her my best. She left. I sat in the empty apartment and thought about pressure and cracks and the moment when people stop pretending and start making mistakes. Victoria was scared now. Garrett was scared. They'd been operating in secret, in the comfortable darkness of lies and stolen moments. Now there was light. Now there were consequences. And I was just getting started. Sunday morning, Meredith called me. Owen, can we talk? Sure. Not on the phone. Can you meet me for coffee? When? Now? There was something in her voice. Urgency, concern, something that made me agree immediately. We met at a cafe near her house, a small place with outdoor seating and strong espresso. Meredith was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, looking worried. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. What's going on? She took a breath. Victoria's been staying with us. You know that. Yeah. And she's been upset, crying a lot, saying you've been acting crazy, that you're threatening her and her colleagues, that she doesn't feel safe. Is that what she told you? Yes. And Owen, I've known you for 3 years. You've never been violent or controlling or any of the things she's implying. So I started asking questions. What kind of questions? About why you were acting this way, about what specifically you'd found that made you suspicious. And she kept deflecting, kept making it about your behavior instead of hers. Meredith paused. So last night, while she was in the shower, I looked at her phone. My heart started beating faster. And she changed her password, but she'd written it down on a piece of paper in her wallet. I know I shouldn't have looked, but Owen, I had to know if my friend was in danger or if she was lying to me. What did you find? Meredith pulled out her own phone and showed me a photo she'd taken. Text messages between Victoria and Garrett Finch, dozens of them going back months. Planning meetings, making excuses, discussing me, calling me clueless, pathetic, easy to manage. And then, 2 days ago, a message from Garrett. Your husband is more of a problem than you said. He has emails, he's threatening to go public. We need to shut this down. Victoria's response. I know, I'm working on it. He'll back down if I make him feel guilty enough. He always does. I stared at the messages, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I'm so sorry, Meredith said quietly. I didn't want to believe it. Victoria's been my friend since college. But Owen, she's not the person I thought she was, and you deserve to know the truth. Thank you. What are you going to do? I looked at the messages again, at Victoria's casual cruelty, at her calculation, at the way she'd been manipulating me even as I thought I was uncovering her secrets. I'm going to stop playing defense, I said. Meredith nodded. Paul and I told her she needs to find somewhere else to stay. We're not going to be part of this. I appreciate that. Owen? Whatever you do, be careful. She's scared, and scared people make bad decisions. I left the cafe and drove home, thinking about manipulation and guilt, and the moment when you realize someone has been treating you like a fool for months. Victoria had been playing me. Every apology, every promise, every moment of vulnerability, it had all been strategy. She'd never intended to save our marriage. She'd only intended to manage me until she figured out her next move. Well, now I was going to figure out mine. Monday morning, I called Donald Pryor. I'm ready to file. You're sure? Absolutely. How fast can we move? I can have papers drawn up by Wednesday, served by Friday. Do it. I also called Helen and told her I needed to take the rest of the week off. Owen, are you okay? You've been missing a lot of work lately. I'm dealing with some personal issues, but I'll be back next week, I promise, and I'll work remotely if you need me for anything urgent. Just take care of yourself. The work will be here when you get back. Then I did something I'd been planning since Friday. I created a simple website, nothing fancy, just a single page with a timeline, photos, and copies of the emails between Victoria and Garrett Finch. Everything documented, everything dated, everything proven. The title at the top, The Cost of Deception. I didn't publish it, not yet, but I registered the domain and had it ready. Tuesday evening, Victoria came back to the apartment. She let herself in with her key and found me sitting on the couch with my laptop. We need to talk, she said. Okay. I know you're angry. I know you feel betrayed. But Owen, we can work through this. If you'll just give me a chance. I spoke with Meredith. Her face went white. What? She showed me the messages. The ones where you call me clueless and pathetic. The ones where you and Garrett discuss how to manage me. I was venting. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. She sat down heavily in the chair across from me. Owen, please. I made mistakes. I was confused, but I never wanted to hurt you. You wanted to have your affair without consequences. There's a difference. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She looked down at her hands. I don't know. It just happened. He was exciting and successful and made me feel important, and you were so stable and predictable, and I needed something different. So you lied to me for 6 months. I'm sorry. Are you? She looked up, tears streaming down her face. Yes. God, Owen, yes. I never wanted it to go this far. I never wanted you to find out like this. I was going to end it with him. I was going to fix things with us. When? Soon. How soon? After 6 more months? A year? When were you actually going to stop lying? I don't know. The apartment fell silent except for her crying. I looked at her and tried to feel something. Pity, anger, sadness, anything. But all I felt was cold certainty. I'm filing for divorce, I said quietly, on grounds of adultery. The papers will be served to you on Friday. Owen, please. And unless you and Garrett want those emails to become public record in court, you'll sign quickly and agree to equitable division without fighting. Are you threatening me? I'm clarifying consequences. She wiped her eyes. I thought you loved me. I did, but you're not the person I loved. Maybe you never were. She stood up shakily. I'll get my things. She went to the bedroom and started packing. I heard drawers opening and closing, hangers scraping, the sounds of someone dismantling a life. 20 minutes later, she came out with 2 suitcases and a garment bag. I'll arrange to get the rest of my stuff later. Fine. She stopped at the door. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. So am I. She left. I sat on the couch for a long time after she was gone, staring at the closed door, thinking about apologies and consequences and the difference between being sorry and being caught. Then I opened my laptop and looked at the website I'd created. Not published yet, just ready, insurance, in case Victoria or Garrett decided to make things difficult, in case they thought they could spin this story their way, in case they forgot that I had evidence and they only had excuses. I hoped I wouldn't need it, but I was prepared if I did. Wednesday afternoon, Donald Pryor called with news. Papers are ready. We can serve them Friday as planned. But Owen, I got a call from an attorney named Richard Tesler. He says he represents Victoria and wants to discuss settlement before we file. She hired someone? Fast too. Tesler's good. Expensive, but good. He wants to meet tomorrow, see if we can resolve this without formal proceedings. What do you think? I think it means she's scared. She knows what those emails show, knows they'll be public record if we file. She wants to settle quietly. What would a settlement look like? Depends what you want. Asset division is straightforward. You split the joint account. She keeps the apartment since it's in her name. But we could negotiate for additional compensation, maybe half the security deposit you contributed, portion of utilities paid. Not a lot of money, but it's the principle. I don't care about the money. Then what do you care about? Good question. What did I care about? I'd wanted Victoria to understand what she'd done. I'd wanted consequences. I'd wanted revenge. But sitting there on the phone with Pryor, I realized something. I didn't want revenge anymore. I just wanted to be done. Set up the meeting, I said. Let's hear what they offer. Thursday at 2 o'clock, we met at Pryor's office. Victoria was there with Richard Tesler, a man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit. Victoria looked terrible. Puffy eyes, no makeup, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt like she'd given up trying. We sat across from each other at Pryor's conference table. Tesler spoke first. Gentlemen, my client would like to avoid formal proceedings if possible. She's prepared to offer a fair settlement. I'm listening. Pryor said, Mrs. Harding will execute an uncontested dissolution. She'll agree to equitable division of all marital assets, specifically a 50-50 split of the joint checking account. She'll retain the apartment and assume full responsibility for the lease going forward. Mr. Harding will remove himself from all joint accounts and utilities within 30 days. In exchange, Mr. Harding will not pursue fault-based grounds and will agree to a no-contest dissolution. No, I said. Everyone looked at me. Owen, Victoria started. No, you don't get to pretend this was mutual. You don't get to erase what you did. We file on fault grounds, or there's no deal. Tesler frowned. Mr. Harding, I understand you're upset, but I have emails proving adultery. They're documented, dated, explicit. If we file, they become public record. Every client Victoria has, every business connection Garrett Finch has, they'll all have access. That's vindictive, Tesler said. That's honest, Victoria spoke quietly. What do you want, Owen? I want you to admit what you did, in the court filing. I want it on record that you committed adultery, that you lied repeatedly, that you destroyed our marriage, and then I want you to sign the dissolution papers and go away. And if I do that, then I won't publish the website. Pryor's head snapped toward me. What website? I pulled out my phone and showed them, the page with the timeline, the photos, the emails, everything documented. It's not published yet, I said, but if you fight the fault grounds, if you try to spin this as anything other than what it was, I'll publish it, and every search engine will index it, and everyone will know. Victoria's face went pale. Tesler looked furious. That's blackmail, he said. No, it's consequences. Victoria wanted to have her affair without anyone knowing. Fine. She can have that, if she's honest in the divorce proceedings. Otherwise, the truth comes out anyway. Silence. Then Victoria said, I'll do it. Vicky, Tesler started. I'll do it. I'll admit fault. I'll sign whatever papers Owen wants. Just make that website go away. Victoria, think about this. I said I'll do it. Tesler sat back, clearly unhappy, but recognizing he'd lost. Pryor looked at me. Is that acceptable? One more thing, I said. Garrett Finch's name goes in the filing. He's named as the correspondent. Owen, please. Victoria's voice broke. Those are my terms. She looked at Tesler. He nodded slowly. All right, she said. Fine. Whatever you want. We spent the next 2 hours working out details. Pryor and Tesler drafted the settlement agreement while Victoria and I sat in uncomfortable silence in the waiting room. Finally, she said, I really did love you, you know, at the beginning. I didn't answer. I'm not a bad person. I just made bad choices. Everyone thinks that. I'll always regret hurting you. I looked at her. No, you won't. You'll regret getting caught. There's a difference. She flinched but didn't argue. At 6 o'clock, we signed the papers. Victoria would file the dissolution paperwork Monday. The fault finding would be on record. Garrett Finch would be named. The marriage would be officially over in 90 days pending court approval, and I would take down the website and delete all the evidence. As we were leaving, Victoria stopped me at the door. What happens to us now? There is no us. That's the point. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about that, about the months of lying, about the manipulation, about calling me clueless and pathetic to her lover. I don't know, I said honestly. But it doesn't matter. Forgiveness is for my benefit, not yours. She nodded slowly and walked away. I watched her go, feeling nothing but relief. Friday morning, I woke up in the apartment that was no longer mine and made coffee in the French press Victoria had left behind. I packed my things systematically: clothes, books, laptop, the few personal items I'd accumulated during our marriage. It all fit in 4 boxes and 2 suitcases. I'd already found a new place, a small 1-bedroom across town. Month-to-month lease, cheap rent, nothing special, but it was mine. At noon, I loaded everything into my car and took one last look at the apartment. 3 years of marriage reduced to 4 boxes. I thought I'd feel sadness or regret. Instead, I just felt tired. I left the keys on the counter and closed the door behind me. At my new apartment, I unpacked slowly. Put clothes in the closet, set up the coffee maker in the kitchen, arranged books on the shelf. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Garrett. I'm sorry for what happened. For what it's worth, I never wanted to hurt you. I hope you can move on. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I blocked the number without responding. Another text, this one from Meredith. Heard everything got settled. Proud of you for handling it with dignity. You deserve better than what she gave you. Let me know if you need anything, I replied. Thanks. I appreciate your honesty through all this. Saturday, I went back to work. Helen greeted me with a careful smile. Welcome back. Everything okay? Getting there. Good. We've got a backlog of optimization requests. Think you can help? Absolutely. I spent the day doing what I did best, solving problems, finding efficiencies, making systems work better. It felt good to focus on something that had clear answers. That evening, I sat in my new apartment with takeout and my laptop, scrolling through the website I'd created. The timeline, the photos, the emails, evidence of Victoria's betrayal, preserved forever in digital form. I could publish it, make sure everyone knew what she'd done, make sure there were social consequences beyond the legal ones. But Pryor's voice echoed in my head. The fastest way to lose the moral high ground is to act like the wronged spouse who can't control their emotions. And I realized something. I didn't need everyone to know. I didn't need public vindication. I just needed to know that I'd stood up for myself, that I'd stopped being the person who got walked over and started being the person who set boundaries, that I'd chosen dignity over revenge. I deleted the website, cleared the cache, erased the evidence, not because Victoria deserved my mercy, but because I deserved my peace. Sunday morning, I went for a run in my new neighborhood. The air was cold and clean, my legs burned, my lungs worked hard, and for the first time in months, I felt something like hope. Not happiness yet, not closure, just the beginning of understanding that this chapter was over, and whatever came next was up to me. My phone rang as I was walking back to my apartment. Donald Pryor. Owen, the dissolution papers were filed this morning. Everything's moving forward as planned. Good. How are you doing? Honestly, I'm okay. That's good to hear. Call me if you need anything. I hung up and looked at my new building. Nothing special, nothing impressive, just a place where I could start over. Then I went inside, took a shower, made coffee, and sat down with my laptop to update my resume. Because forward was the only direction that mattered now. And whatever happened next, it would be on my terms. Monday morning, I woke up early and couldn't fall back asleep. My new apartment was quiet in a way the old one never was. No street noise from 4 floors up. No Victoria getting ready in the bathroom. Just silence and the hum of the refrigerator and my own thoughts. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching my new neighborhood wake up. A man walking his dog, a woman jogging past, normal people starting normal days. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Court filing confirmation. The dissolution papers were officially in the system. Yeah, public record now. Anyone who wanted to could pull them up and see Victoria Harding versus Owen Harding, grounds, adultery, correspondent, Garrett Allen Finch. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I just felt empty. Around 8, my phone rang. Helen. Owen, can you come in today? We have a major issue with the Western Distribution Network. The client is threatening to pull the contract. I'll be there in an hour. I got dressed, drove to the office, and spent the morning doing what I was good at, fixing problems that had clear solutions. The Western Distribution Network had routing conflicts that were causing delays. I rebuilt the algorithm, tested new configurations, found a solution that cut delivery time by 12%. The client was happy. Helen was happy. I got praised in a team meeting. Everything was fine. At lunch, I sat in my car and checked my personal email. 3 messages from Victoria's email address. Please call me. We need to talk about the filing. Owen, I'm begging you. There has to be another way. You're ruining my life. Is that what you want? I deleted all 3 without responding. Another email, this one from Richard Tesler. Mr. Harding, my client is extremely distressed by the public nature of the court filing. She's asking if there's any possibility of amending the paperwork to remove Mr. Finch's name. She's willing to compensate you financially for this consideration. I forwarded it to Donald Pryor with a single word. No. He called me 5 minutes later. You sure about this? She's offering $10,000 to amend the filing. I'm sure. Owen, that's real money, and the damage is already done. Everyone who matters has probably already seen the filing. Then why does she want to change it? Because Garrett Finch is apparently very unhappy. His business partners are asking questions. His investors are concerned. Having his name in a public adultery filing is bad for his reputation. Good. Pryor sighed. All right. I'll tell Tesler no deal. Thanks. That evening, I went to the gym near my new apartment, spent an hour on the treadmill, then weights, then stretching, pushed myself until my muscles burned and my mind went quiet. In the locker room, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We need to meet. Tonight. It's important. Garrett. I almost deleted it. Then I thought about unfinished business and the difference between walking away and running away. I replied, Palmer's Coffee. 8 p.m. He responded immediately. I'll be there. At 8 o'clock, I walked into Palmer's Coffee for the second time in a week, ordered the same black coffee, sat at the same table in the back. Garrett arrived 10 minutes late, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Wrinkled shirt, no sunglasses, dark circles under his eyes. He sat down without asking. You're destroying my business, he said. I'm not doing anything. You did this yourself. That filing is public record. My investors saw it. My business partners saw it. Everyone I work with knows I was named in an adultery case. Then you shouldn't have committed adultery. His hands clenched on the table. This isn't about morality. This is about you being vindictive because your wife chose someone else. My wife lied to me for 6 months while you helped her. You don't get to lecture me about vindictiveness. What do you want? Money? I'll pay you to amend the filing. No. 50,000, cash. No. 100,000. I looked at him carefully. You're that desperate? I have a meeting with my primary investor tomorrow. If I can show him the filing has been amended, if I can prove this was a misunderstanding, I might be able to save the relationship. Otherwise, he's pulling his funding. 3 of my projects will collapse. That's not my problem. Please. His voice cracked slightly. I made a mistake, a stupid, selfish mistake. But I have employees, contractors, people who depend on my business. Don't punish them because you're angry at me. I took a slow sip of my coffee. You want to know what I want? Yes. I want you to understand something. You didn't just have an affair with my wife. You helped her lie to me. You encouraged her manipulation. You treated my marriage like it was meaningless because it was inconvenient for you. I know, and I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you sorry your reputation is suffering? He looked down at the table. Both. Can both be true? Maybe. I stood up. But I'm not changing the filing. You want your reputation back, you'll have to earn it the hard way, by being a better person from now on. Owen, we're done here. I walked out, leaving him sitting alone at the table. Outside, the night air was cold and clear. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing deeply, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not even satisfaction. Just the recognition that I'd said what I needed to say and could finally walk away. Tuesday, Victoria called me directly. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. What? Owen, please, you have to stop this. I'm not doing anything. I filed for divorce. That's what people do when their spouse has an affair. But using Garrett's name, making it public, you're destroying him. And? And it's cruel. It's vindictive. It's not who you are. I laughed. You don't know who I am. You spent 6 months lying to me, and now you think you get to tell me who I am? I made mistakes. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was deliberate. You chose to lie. You chose to manipulate me. You chose to call me pathetic behind my back while pretending everything was fine to my face. Silence. Garrett's business is falling apart, she said quietly. His investors are leaving. His projects are in trouble. He might lose everything. Good. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. He helped you destroy our marriage. Now he's experiencing consequences. That's how it works. But I'm the one who started it. I'm the one who pursued him. If anyone should suffer, it should be me. You are suffering. Your affair is public record. Your friends know, your colleagues know. The difference is, you still have your job. Garrett's losing his business. Maybe that's fair. Maybe he had more to lose. Please, Owen, I'm begging you, amend the filing. Take his name out. I'll do anything. There's nothing you can offer that I want. What about closure? What about being the bigger person? What about mercy? I thought about that word. Mercy. Did they deserve mercy? Victoria, who'd lied to my face for 6 months while calling me clueless behind my back. Garrett, who'd helped her lie, who'd threatened me, who'd only apologized when his reputation was at risk. Mercy is something you asked for before you get caught, I said. Not after. Owen, we're done talking. Don't call me again. I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But underneath the adrenaline, I felt something solid, something certain. I'd made my choice, and I was okay with it. Wednesday morning, Donald Pryor called with an update. Tesla contacted me again. They're offering $250,000 to amend the filing. I almost dropped my phone. What? $250,000. Cash. Apparently Garrett Finch is desperate enough to liquidate assets. His investor meeting didn't go well. He's hemorrhaging partnerships. And Victoria? She's mortified. Her company is asking questions. Clients are uncomfortable. She's probably going to lose some accounts. I sat down on my couch, processing. $250,000. That was real money. Life-changing money. Down payment on a house money. Financial security money. What do you think I should do? I asked. Owen, I'm your attorney, not your conscience. I can tell you the legal implications. If you accept, we amend the filing to remove Garrett's name, list the grounds as adultery without naming the correspondent. The divorce proceeds as planned. You get the money, everyone moves on. But you'll always know you let him buy his way out. And maybe that matters to you. Maybe it doesn't. I thought about Victoria's face in Pryor's conference room, about Garrett's desperation at Palmer's Coffee, about the moment when I'd deleted the website instead of publishing it. Tell them no, I said. Owen, tell them no. The filing stands as is. No amendments, no deals. They want their reputations back. They can rebuild them honestly. Silence on the other end. You're sure? I'm sure. All right. I'll let them know. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, staring at nothing, thinking about money and principles and whether I'd just made the stupidest decision of my life. $250,000. But I'd chosen something else instead. I'd chosen to be the person who couldn't be bought. And somehow, that felt worth more than any amount of money. Thursday afternoon, I got a text from Meredith. Victoria is in bad shape. She's staying at a hotel now. Lost 2 major clients. Her company is considering letting her go. I thought you should know. I stared at the message, trying to feel something. Guilt, satisfaction, anything. But I felt nothing. Just the distant recognition that consequences were playing out exactly as they should. I replied, "Thanks for letting me know." She wrote back, "Are you okay with how this is going? Was I?" I thought about the $250,000 I'd turned down, about Victoria's career imploding, about Garrett's business collapsing. I thought about the 6 months of lies and the emails calling me pathetic and the way they'd both tried to manipulate me even after getting caught. "Yes," I replied, "I am." Friday evening, I was making dinner in my small kitchen when someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. Victoria. I almost didn't open it, but something made me unlock the door. She stood in the hallway looking broken. No makeup, sweatpants and a hoodie, hair in a messy ponytail, eyes red from crying. "Can I come in?" she asked. "No." "Please, just for a minute." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She walked into my apartment and looked around, at the sparse furniture, the unpacked boxes, the life I was building without her. "I came to tell you that you won," she said. "Is that what you want to hear? You won. I lost my biggest clients. My company is pushing me out. I'm probably going to have to leave the city because my reputation is destroyed. Garrett's business is failing. Everyone knows what we did. You got your revenge." "I didn't want revenge." "Then what did you want?" "I wanted you to understand what you did. I wanted consequences. I wanted to stop being the person everyone walks over because I'm too nice to fight back." "Well, congratulations. You're not that person anymore." We stood in silence for a moment. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For all of it. for lying, for the affair, for calling you those things, for everything. Okay. Okay? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Victoria? That I forgive you? That I understand? I don't. Maybe someday I will, but not today. Will you at least amend the filing, please? If not for Garrett, then for me? I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find any trace of the woman I'd married, the woman I'd thought I loved, but all I saw was a stranger who'd worn my wife's face while lying to me for 6 months. No, I said quietly. I won't. Her face crumpled. Then we really are done. We've been done since the moment you started lying to me. This is just making it official. She nodded slowly and walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I really did love you, once. I know, I loved you too. But love isn't enough when trust is gone. She left without another word. I closed the door and stood in my empty apartment, feeling the weight of the past 6 months finally lifting. It wasn't closure exactly. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was just the end of something that had needed to end and the beginning of whatever came next. Saturday morning, Donald Pryor called with unusual urgency in his voice. Owen, we have a situation. What kind of situation? Richard Tesler filed an emergency motion yesterday afternoon. They're claiming the public filing is causing irreparable harm to both Victoria and Garrett Finch. They want a judge to seal the records. Can they do that? They can try. We have a hearing Monday morning. Judge Patterson is hearing it. If he agrees the filing is causing undue harm beyond what's normal for these cases, he might seal it or at least redact Garrett's name. My stomach dropped. After everything, they might still win? It's possible. Patterson tends to be sympathetic to privacy concerns. But Owen, here's the thing. They're arguing that you've been deliberately publicizing the case beyond normal legal proceedings. I haven't done anything. Zaki, I deleted the website like I agreed. I know. But they're claiming you've been talking to Victoria's clients and business associates. That's not true. I believe you, but they're going to argue it anyway. The hearing is Monday at 9. You need to be there. I spent the weekend preparing. Printed copies of all my communications, or rather, the lack of them. I hadn't contacted anyone about the case, hadn't called Victoria's clients, hadn't spread the information beyond what was already public record. Sunday evening, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the possibility that after everything, Victoria and Garrett might still escape consequences, that money and lawyers might still win, that doing the right thing might not matter after all. Monday morning, I put on my best suit and drove to the courthouse. The family court building was old and imposing, all stone columns and high ceilings and the smell of floor polish and old paper. Donald Pryor met me outside courtroom 3. How are you holding up? He asked. I'm fine. What's our strategy? Simple truth. You filed a legitimate dissolution on legitimate grounds with legitimate evidence. The fact that it's embarrassing for them doesn't make it improper. We let them make their argument, then we calmly dismantle it. Inside the courtroom, Victoria and Garrett sat on one side with Richard Tesler and another attorney I didn't recognize, probably Garrett's personal counsel. They looked nervous. Good. Judge Patterson entered, and we all stood. He was older, maybe 70, with white hair and reading glasses hanging on a chain around his neck. He sat down heavily and reviewed the file in front of him. All right, he said. This is an emergency motion to seal records in the matter of Harding versus Harding. Mr. Tesler, you filed the motion. Make your argument. Tesler stood. Your Honor, my client Mrs. Victoria Harding and the named correspondent Mr. Garrett Finch are suffering irreparable harm due to the public nature of this filing. Mrs. Harding has lost multiple professional clients. Mr. Finch's business is facing bankruptcy. Both have been subjected to public ridicule and professional ostracism that goes far beyond the normal consequences of dissolution proceedings. Adultery is a serious allegation, Judge Patterson said. It's supposed to have consequences. Yes, Your Honor, but we believe Mr. Owen Harding has gone beyond legitimate use of the court system and is weaponizing public records to punish my client and Mr. Finch. How so? We have evidence that Mr. Harding created a website detailing the affair, including private emails and photographs. While he claims to have deleted it, we believe he may have distributed this information to business associates and clients before deletion. Judge Patterson looked at me. Mr. Harding? I stood. That's not true, Your Honor. Did you create a website? Yes, but I never published it, and I deleted it completely after the settlement agreement was signed. Can you prove that? Pryor stood. Your Honor, we have server logs showing the domain was registered but never publicly activated. No traffic, no visitors, no distribution. Mr. Harding kept his word. What about contacting third parties? Mr. Harding has had zero contact with anyone related to Mrs. Harding's business or Mr. Finch's business. We can provide phone records, email logs, anything you need to verify this. Tesler interrupted. Your Honor, the damage is still occurring. Whether or not Mr. Harding is actively publicizing the information, the public filing itself is accessible to anyone who searches. My client's professional reputation is being destroyed by a matter that should be private. Judge Patterson leaned back in his chair. Mr. Tesler, your client committed adultery. Mr. Finch participated in that adultery. This isn't defamation. This isn't false information. This is truth, properly documented in a legitimate legal proceeding. But, Your Honor, the fact that truth is embarrassing doesn't make it improper to state. The fact that consequences are severe doesn't mean the filing was vindictive. He looked at me. Mr. Harding, did you file this dissolution in good faith, based on legitimate grounds? Yes, Your Honor. Did you exaggerate or falsify any information? No, Your Honor. Everything in the filing is accurate and supported by evidence. Did you publicize this information beyond what's normally accessible through public court records? No, Your Honor. He turned back to Tesler. Then I see no grounds to seal the records. Your client's engaged in conduct that has natural consequences. Those consequences may be professionally damaging, but that's the risk they took when they chose to engage in the conduct. Motion denied. Tesler's face fell. Your Honor, please, motion denied. The filing stands as is. Is there anything else? No, Your Honor. Then we're adjourned. He stood and left the courtroom. Victoria burst into tears. Garrett put his head in his hands. Tesler looked like he wanted to argue more, but knew it was pointless. Pryor and I walked out together. That went well, he said once we were in the hallway. It's really over? Unless they appeal, which would be expensive and probably futile. Yes, it's over. The filing is public record permanently. Nothing they can do about it. I leaned against the wall, feeling something release in my chest. Thank you. You did good in there. Calm, honest, dignified, that matters to judges. We shook hands and I left the courthouse. Outside, the morning sun was bright and warm. I stood on the steps for a moment, breathing deeply, watching people walk past, lawyers and clients and courthouse staff, everyone dealing with their own problems, their own crises, their own consequences. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've done to my life. Garrett. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I deleted it without responding and blocked the number. I was done engaging, done defending, done explaining. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. The consequences were playing out exactly as they should, and I was finally, truly free. 3 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. I signed the papers in Donald Pryor's office on a Tuesday afternoon. Victoria signed them remotely. She'd apparently left the city, moved somewhere cheaper where her reputation hadn't preceded her. That's it, Pryor said, handing me the final copy. You're officially unmarried. Thank you for everything. You handled this better than most people would have. You should be proud of yourself. I drove back to my apartment, stopping at the grocery store on the way. Bought food for one person, made dinner for one person, sat in my small living room and ate while watching the news. Everything was quiet. Everything was normal. Everything was mine. Thursday, I went back to work full-time. Helen had piled projects on my desk, optimizations that needed running, efficiency reports that needed analysis. I dove in, losing myself in spreadsheets and algorithms and problems that had clear solutions. At lunch, Jennifer asked how I was doing. Better, I said. Getting there. Good. You seem more settled. I am. That evening, I went for a run in my new neighborhood, pushed myself harder than usual until my lungs burned and my legs ached and my mind went completely quiet. When I got back to my apartment, there was a letter slipped under my door. No return address, just my name written in handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Owen, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say this, and I needed to say it in a way you couldn't ignore. You were right about everything. I lied. I manipulated you. I treated our marriage like it didn't matter, and I convinced myself it was somehow justified because I was unhappy, because I deserved more, because you were too stable and predictable. But the truth is, you were the best thing in my life, and I destroyed it because I was selfish and cowardly. Garrett and I are done. His business is bankrupt. He blames me for everything, like none of this was his fault, like he was just an innocent victim in my schemes. It's pathetic. I moved back to my hometown, started over with nothing. I'm working a job I hate, living in a place I can't afford, watching my entire life collapse because of choices I made. And you know what the worst part is? I deserve all of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that you weren't crazy. You weren't paranoid. You were right to trust your instincts. You were right to demand consequences. I hope wherever you are, you're building something better than what we had. You deserve that. Victoria. I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Not out of sentimentality, just as documentation. Just as proof that what I'd done had mattered. Then I sat down at my laptop and opened a new document. Not a website this time, not evidence or timelines or documentation, just a blank page. And I started writing about logistics optimization, about efficiency improvements, about the work that made sense. Because that's what mattered now. Not the past, not revenge, not even justice. Just moving forward, just building something new. Just being the person I'd chosen to become instead of the person they'd tried to make me. Friday evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Hello? Owen Harding? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Yes? This is Jennifer Cho from Pacific Logistics Solutions. We came across your work through some industry connections, and we're very impressed with your optimization algorithms. We're looking for a senior systems analyst to head up our new Eastern Division. Would you be interested in discussing the position? I sat up straighter. Yes, I would. Excellent. The position is based in Boston. Significant salary increase from what we understand you're currently making, full benefits, relocation assistance. Can you send us your resume? Absolutely. Great. We'll be in touch next week to schedule an interview. She hung up. I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, processing what had just happened. A job offer. In a new city, a fresh start. Everything I'd been working toward without even realizing it. I spent the weekend updating my resume, researching the company, preparing for the interview that might change everything. Monday morning, I sent the application. Tuesday afternoon, they called to schedule an interview for next week. I booked a flight to Boston. And for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't anger or emptiness or grief. I felt hope. Not the naive hope of someone who doesn't know better, but the earned hope of someone who's been through something terrible and come out the other side. The kind of hope that comes from surviving. The next Friday, I stood in my apartment with a packed suitcase, ready to fly to Boston for the interview. My phone buzzed one last time. Donald Pryor. Just wanted to check in. How are you doing? I replied. Good. Really good. Thank you for everything. You earned it. Good luck with whatever comes next. I looked around my small apartment, the temporary place I'd landed when everything fell apart. But it wasn't temporary anymore. It was the place where I'd learned to stand up for myself. Where I'd learned that consequences matter, where I'd learned that sometimes doing the right thing means choosing yourself instead of being the bigger person. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door. Didn't look back. Just walked forward into whatever came next. Because that's what survivors do. They keep moving. They keep building. They keep becoming the person they were meant to be all along. The person who doesn't accept lies. The person who demands respect. The person who understands that revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about consequences. And sometimes, consequences are exactly what everyone needs. I closed the door behind me and walked toward the future I was building, one choice at a time.